The shocking origin of something that everybody loves. I met a writer named Thomas Desch when I was in college. He wrote The Brave Little Toaster. He told us Disney hired him to write a movie about lions. He wanted to do King Lear with lions because the plot mirrored how lion prides operate. Old, lazy but powerful male, dangerous daughters. But Disney said they wanted a young hero, so he changed it to Hamlet with lions. Uncle kills father, kid runs away, ghost of dad visits and calls for revenge, but with a happy ending, like Timon and Pumbaa, a Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. He wrote a 9-page treatment and turned it in. They said thanks, but no thanks, and then fired him. The movie comes out. It's pretty clear they've taken his idea and they didn't pay him. He said Disney was notorious for doing this to creators. I read years later that he'd sadly taken himself off our mortal coil. I never think about The Lion King without thinking about him. They made so much money off his idea and he got nothing. I'm not diving deep into big authorship questions, I'm just passing on the story about how I remember it as he told it to us. This was 25 years ago that we met him. All movies are collaborations. I don't think this defined his life or that his ending was an outcome of Disney's poor treatment of him. He told my creative writing class that story to teach us about the perils of writing creatively for corporate clients. He wasn't super angry about it, just annoyed. He was a great writer and was still struggling financially when that happened. The larger point is that he felt exploited, and it sucks when big corporations don't share their profits with those who contribute. Sherman Kelly wrote the lyrics to Dancing in the Moonlight while recovering from a violent attack carried out on him and his girlfriend by a youth gang. He envisioned an alternative reality where people just danced and were happy all the time. It was his way of dealing with the trauma. God, to think that so many people have such good memories from that song, though. He really created something beautiful for everyone from his trauma. Access to comfort and reframing traumatic situations in a healthy way is a good way to avoid PTSD too. So I hope it was somewhat of a therapeutic thing for him to write it. Like Weird Al. Both of his parents died on the same day of carbon monoxide poisoning. He still lit a concert that night saying, "Since my music had helped many of my fans through tough times, maybe it could work for me as well." Canonically, Chuck E. Cheese is an orphan who never knew when his birthday was, so he celebrates other people's birthdays to fill the terrible, painful void of his abandonment. Plus he's a rat. A powerful rat named Charles Entertainment Cheese. Okay, you aren't taking this question seriously. But once again, I can't be reminded of literally any of the lore behind Charles Entertainment Cheese without smiling. So now you all get to hear it again. In the animated film All Dogs Go to Heaven, the actress who plays Anne-Marie was killed in a horrible domestic situation prior to the film being released, along with her entire family. Burt Reynolds struggled hard to finish recording his scene where Charlie says goodbye to the little girl one last time before going to heaven. It's a tear-inducing scene without knowing the backstory, but you can absolutely hear the pain in Reynolds' voice. It's generally considered a very loving and touching moment, but knowing what happened makes it really hard to listen to without getting emotional. Wow, thank you to all the others chiming in here. I didn't realize that she also voiced Ducky from The Land Before Time. The song Save the Last Dance for Me by the Drifters was written by a man who was crippled by polio and in a wheelchair watching his new wife dancing with other men at his wedding to her because he couldn't. In the song, he's saying that he's the one taking her home, not them. I don't think he's angry, he's just saying that no matter who she dances with, she's his wife and will be taking her home at the end of the night. Candyland was invented during the polio epidemic by retired schoolteacher Eleanor Abbott, who herself was recovering from polio. She invented the game to keep children entertained during their hospital stays who themselves were affected. Scottish Folds. Those cute cats with the folded ears. They have those ears because of osteochondrodysplasia. It causes joint, cartilage, and skeletal deformities. There's no treatment, only pain management. Those poor cats are in constant pain. I learned something new and sad today. Cats are so good at masking pain, so it makes it even worse. For a while, Neopets was owned and operated by Scientologists. They wanted to add religion to it while they had it. The kids' book, Love You Forever by Robert Munsch, As Long as I'm Living, My Baby You'll Be, was written in the wake of the author and his wife losing their twins. Sadder yet, it was a lullaby he sung to himself to cope years before he wrote it into a book. It's one of the most intimate connections an author's ever made with millions of people. The Wizard of Oz could have had its own behind-the-scenes movie with the amount of crap that went down. The Tin Man actor switcheroo. The original actor got massively sick from the silver body paint and couldn't continue, so they recast the role. If you listen to the soundtrack carefully, The two tracks of We're Off to See the Wizard, After Meeting the Tin Woodsman, Then the Lion, both have Buddy Ebsen's voice, not Jack Haley's. They didn't bother re-recording those two. And Margaret Hamilton got badly burned by one of the takes of flames shooting up and her disappearing through the trapdoor in Munchkinland. As the green makeup was copper-based, there was a bit of a race against time to get what they could off her burned hands so it wouldn't poison her. As her appearances in Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood still testify, she still thoroughly enjoyed the part. Free school lunches in America started because the military complained that during World War II that many 18-year-old men were too skinny to serve in the military. Free school lunches were added afterwards to make 18-year-old men strong enough to be drafted into the next war. Everything about school in America seems to be about the war. Same thing with gym. The only reason phys ed exists in the first place is because they wanted to train people to be fit for going into the military. The voice actor for the classic Disney Peter Pan died alone after taking too many substances in an abandoned warehouse after years of being unable to get work in Hollywood later in life. The creator of Monopoly actually intended it as a warning about the dangers of capitalism, not a celebration of it. Nintendo started as a card company in the late 1800s. It probably would have gone defunct were it not for the Yakuza. Yeah, but the number of Japanese companies that applies to is actually pretty high. Dole, the banana company, overthrowing the Queen of Hawaii. Also Chiquita Bananas, United Fruit Co., in Guatemala, hence the term Banana Republic. Corporate horrors really have no limit. Look up how many people Nestle killed in Africa. The snake that's killed in Friday the 13th was a real snake. To make matters worse, it wasn't some wild snake they found in the woods, it was somebody's pet that had to watch his snake get killed. He apparently had no idea and had to be held back from punching the director. There were a lot of shady things that went on with the production of those films. At one point, a director kept making an actress film in freezing water over and over again and was only stopped because the actor playing Jason in that one refused to keep filming unless he gave her time to dry off and warm up. Valentine's Day. Saint Valentine was killed for being the priest to marry people so men could get out of war. For this, he was beheaded. Well, yes, that does seem like a bit of an overreaction. Resusci Annie, the rubbery anatomical model we learned CPR on. The face is modelled after the death mask of an unidentified and unclaimed woman who drowned in the Seine River in the late 1800s. Toymaker Osmond S. Lairdal chose to use the woman's face on the mannequin as he thought male trainees might be reluctant to kiss a man's face. The face was sculpted by the Norwegian-Danish sculptor Emma Mathiesen. There's also plenty of evidence stating that only having a male CPR dummy with no visible chesty bits has inadvertently caused harm to women requiring CPR because women don't know how to give CPR to someone with a female chest. Went to a community event last night, and 32 years later, the Macarena still fills the dance floor. A bunch of teens learned the dance for the very first time. The lyrics are, of course, in Spanish, and about the titular Macarena having a big old communal romp with her boyfriend's friends while he's off swearing his military oath. Also interesting is that the band played traditional music primarily, and this was their first pop release. When they were in their 50s, they went back to traditional music straight afterwards. The little girl who played Matilda in the movie Matilda, her mum had died of cancer before the movie was released. I believe the director showed the mum a rough cut before she passed, but geez, that made me sad to learn as an adult. I'm pretty sure that Danny DeVito and his wife Rhea Perlman, who were Matilda's parents in the movie, they took her in for a bit while this was going on. The weirdest trivia I know about her, Mara Wilson, is that her cousin is Ben Shapiro. When I was 10 or so, my sisters and I were doing a common counting rhyme to pick something, maybe who went first in a game. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe. If he hollers, let him go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. My dad walked by and quietly commented, "When I was your age, that word wasn't tiger, but we didn't know better back then." My mum used to tell me they called Brazil nuts, like the big ones in the mixed nut bags you buy at the grocery store, N-word toes. And that first nursery rhyme was at least prevalent up until the early 2000s while I was growing up. So my money's on it still being around in its censored form. We should really get a new one. Most fairy tales. Disney has scrubbed all of the Grimm out of the Brothers Grimm. In the original story, the queen in Snow White is put in red-hot iron shoes at the wedding and made to dance until she falls down dead. This is often mentioned concerning interesting trivia about certain songs, But Stayin' Alive by the Bee Gees, the immortal disco anthem, is about how life in New York in the 1970s sucked, and people often felt lost with no purpose. Life going nowhere, somebody help me. And the only thing they had to fall back on was dancing at the club. Feel the city breakin', everybody's shakin' and we're stayin' alive, stayin' alive. Mary Kay Bergman was an incredibly wonderful voice actress who was known for her roles such as Snow White from 89 to 99 and Daphne Blake from 97 to 99. In 97, she joined the original cast of South Park under the name of Shannon Cassidy in order to not cause issues with Disney and her roles as Snow White. She voiced all of the female characters in South Park until 1999. In November of 99, she spent the day contributing to a Disney radio program as Snow White, and then that night she went home and took action to not be alive anymore. She used a firearm and left 2 notes for people she loved, stating that she couldn't handle her fear. Matt Stone and Trey Parker were initially so impacted by it that they couldn't even issue a statement about losing her for a bit. In the Mr. Hanky Christmas sing-along episode, the final number is "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" as a direct tribute to her. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Best Friends Animal Society was founded by Scientology members who formed their own cult spin-off, the Process Church. They associated with Charles Manson and David Berkowitz, and the author of Helter Skelter postulating that Manson was heavily influenced by Process. The rescue was originally a grift to keep their church going. They eventually moved to rescue full-time after realizing how incredibly lucrative, and like their church, tax-free that it could be. With $200 million in assets, $314 million in 2024 revenue, and 2 private jets, you can see just how well their grift has paid off. Ghislaine Raza, that Star Wars kid pretending he was a Jedi, had his video posted onto Kazaa without permission by his schoolmates to prank him, and as a result he was bullied at school. People made fun of him online, gave him death threats, told him to end himself, all for pretending to be a Star Wars character, which is honestly a completely normal thing that kids do. He also had to go to a mental hospital, and his parents sued the kids who uploaded the video. Luckily, he did return to school to finish his senior year and went to McGill University in Montreal. Got a law degree and he became president of his city's Heritage Society. White Christmas was written by Irving Berlin, a Russian Jew, ostensibly about the loss of his child on Christmas Day 1928. You basically couldn't get a bleaker backstory for a beloved Christmas classic. The guy who started the black and blue or white and gold dress debate from 2015 was charged with attacking his wife. Amish people are supposedly these honest farmers eschewing modern ways. But Amish are actually running gigantic puppy mills for big profit. They stack cages floor to ceiling, treating the mom and dad dogs with abject cruelty, never a kind word or a touch. The dogs rescued from these puppy mills are the most traumatized and mistreated dogs I've ever fostered. We fostered over 220 dogs. One sad, fearful dog wouldn't let me touch him for 3 weeks. Another just had to be euthanized because of chronic untreated ear infection for years, causing end-stage ear growths, which plugged his ears and made him deaf and in constant pain. So screw the Amish, cruel, greedy animal mistreaters. I'm in the horse industry and I've worked with a number of ex-Amish horses. They're so shut down and broken because they don't even know they can fight back most of the time. They're just treated like machines by the community and are discarded when they break down. The company that makes sleepy time tea, Celestial Seasonings, was invented by a weird cult that promotes racism and eugenics as a science, and has integrated their teachings into the branding and marketing of said teas. It's real weird. The Volkswagen Beetle was a beloved car with a quirky design. It was also commissioned by order of the leader of the Third Reich, and designed by Ferdinand Porsche as an affordable, practical vehicle for the German public. Its original name was the KDF Wagen, which was an abbreviation of the leader's youth group motto, Kraft durch Freude, or Strength Through Joy. Bananas. You thought substances were a blood-soaked cartel and war-driven commodity. The banana trade makes white snow look like a farmer's market. Also chocolate, coffee, tea, spices, and most tropical fruits. And meat, and seafood. Basically everything we eat, wear, and use. Private military conflicts in general are an incredibly interesting and eye-opening rabbit hole. Dole specifically is worth reading up on for anyone interested in corporate warfare. Henry Ford promoted square dancing in public schools, starting in the 1920s. Sounds wholesome? He did it because he hated Jews and thought they invented jazz. He wanted to get America back to traditional white and Christian music and dancing. Sea monkeys. Harold von Braunhut was an American mail-order marketer and inventor, most famous as the creator and seller of both the amazing sea monkeys and the X-ray specs, along with many other novelty products marketed towards children, often advertised in comic books. Despite his Jewish upbringing, he closely associated with white supremacy groups. He helped buy firearms for a Klan faction in Ohio. He was a regular at the annual Aryan Nations World Congress, where he sometimes had the honor of lighting the cross. Quality guy. The history of the dunk tank. To explain using the Wikipedia for this particular device, the African Dodger, otherwise as hit the slang for raccoon that we can't say on YouTube because it's also a racial slur, later called hit the N-word baby, was a popular game up until the 1960s. Then it got rebranded to Drop the Chocolate Drop with the slogan, amusing to all but the victim. Seriously, what the frick? The reason cats and dogs like squeaky toys is not because the noise is funny, it's because the sound is similar to the death screams of their prey. The Chippendales dance scene with Chris Farley on SNL was actually viewed as a negative thing by Chris and the cast afterwards. It was demeaning to his body image and ultimately did him no favors. Oneida Limited makes tableware and cutlery. They've been in business for nearly 2 centuries and started as a communist bedroom cult built around group marriage. Alfred Nobel, the creator of the Nobel Prize, was the inventor of dynamite and amassed his wealth by developing, manufacturing, and selling explosives, the weapons of mass destruction of his day. A French newspaper mistakenly published an obituary for his death when another arms manufacturer died, calling him the Merchant of Death. Seeing what his legacy was and how he and his family name were going to be remembered, he changed his will to found the Nobel Prize. I would note that the newspaper was being a bit unfair to him. Nobel made his fortune from explosives, yes, but they were primarily used in mining and excavation, not in warfare. His inventions were primarily focused on making explosives safer to handle, and thus usable in more delicate situations, not making them more effective for artillery. Yeah, the man can hardly be blamed for trying to refine what was basically a poorly understood and slapdash product at best into something infinitely safer to use. It's not really his fault that meant that people used it to manufacture arms instead. Coco Chanel was a supporter of that German party led by that guy. In other words, she was a Third Reich enthusiast. Semi-Charmed Life by Third Eye Blind, the chorus of which was used by commercials and movie trailers in the 90s, is actually about being a substance addict. The song My Sharona by The Knack was about the lead singer perving on, well, someone he definitely shouldn't have been interested in. It's still a very catchy song on the surface, but it's still a song about a pretty crappy guy admitting to something that we can't really say all that comfortably on YouTube. On a similar note, the guy that lost 300 pounds by eating Subway didn't lose weight by eating Subway. He lost weight by walking daily to a particular Subway that wasn't even the nearest one, just so he could see an underaged girl that worked there. And, well, that was far from the worst thing he did with people under a certain age bracket. Seriously, screw Jared. Horton Hears a Who was written after Dr. Seuss visited a post-World War II Japan and saw people in Hiroshima trying to rebuild their lives and basically serves as his commentary on the whole interaction between the US and Japan, both pre- and post-bombing. The song Pumped Up Kicks is catchy and was used in things like commercials and children's parties years ago. It's also pretty clearly about committing a school firearm tragedy. It's not like you even have to dig through layers of hidden meaning or decipher some kind of complex metaphor to get there. It's explicitly about how some of the others had, quote, better outrun my bullet. Pugs and other similar dog breeds suffer all of their lives because of selective breeding, leading to the deformation of their faces, legs, bodies, and skin, plus cardiac and respiratory issues. I really hope they get extinct someday because I can't bear watching such an aberration of nature due to human vanity. No thing should suffer their entire life to only look cute or adorable or luxury. Alice in Wonderland was written by an adult man, Lewis Carroll, on a boat with 3 young girls, aimed at one of them, Alice. They enjoyed the whimsical story so much that they said he should write it down. It's been heavily theorized that he was trying to woo the 10-year-old girl. and there were pages of his diary that were removed by his family. His relationship with younger people was seen as unusual at the time, and it was he, 30 years old at the time, and his friend, a 24-year-old male, on the boat with these 3 children, and there were no familial ties. He was good friends with their father, he was part of the church, and he'd often have picnics with the family and the girls. There was an end to these and a huge falling out between Lewis and Alice's family a year after the boat story. The pages in his diary around this time are torn out. 3 years after the boat story, he did publish Alice in Wonderland. There are implications from his family's journals that he intended to wed Alice or Alice's mother in the future. Yogi T is owned by a cult, allegedly. But the sweet little affirmations. Actually, it is a bit culty, isn't it? P.T. Barnum's whole circus story. That guy was a monster in real life and horrible to his workers and his family alike. Greatest Showman is a fun movie, but do not take that as the truth. The data which is used for calculating the chances of naval rescue missions comes from human experiments in those camps in World War II. They threw inmates into water tanks of different temperatures and measured how long it took until they froze to death or drowned. Mormonism's got a closet of nearly all skeletons and no garments. I had many Mormon friends growing up, they had huge families, and such a seemingly joyful sense of church and community, and I was jealous that I couldn't be a part of that. Then, as we got older, I started finding out all kinds of messed up stuff that was going on behind closed doors. Repression, affairs, insane control tactics by the church. One of my best friends was basically locked down by her parents and wasn't allowed to have contact with non-Mormons anymore. I was just a teenager, but it was so obviously cultist behavior. What's the most real relationship advice you can give? It's fine to not always want to spend 100% of your time with your spouse. Not every moment of every day is going to be bliss, and sometimes it really takes some effort. I love my wife to bits, but there are some days when I would just like to do things by myself. It doesn't mean our relationship isn't great, but it can be really refreshing just to take a stroll around a shopping center, or go get some food alone or something. This 100%. My spouse goes to a weekly Pathfinder game. That's his alone time. I occasionally go to a punk show or have a beer with my friends. It can be even simpler. I will go read a book in the other room and get my alone time. He likes to cook, so he'll start up in the kitchen and I stay away while he listens to his music. Everyone needs alone time. Don't lose yourself as an individual in a relationship. Happened to me. Where were you 10 years ago? Ah, but would you have listened 10 years ago? I think it's so important to have your own social lives and circles, but I see so many couples who bring their partner to everything, to the point that they're basically a part of every social group that person is in. Where does that person then have an escape to? When can they go out with their friends without the other one feeling bad for not being invited? Keep your own circle. My partner and I have been friends for years, even before we were a couple, so we have the same friend group. I combat this by asking when he wants me to tag along to outings like shopping, and also we have pretty chill home life. Also, we're not attached at the hip at events, and I know when to step back and let him have one-on-one conversations. I try and let him know that it's okay for us to do our own thing and I won't be offended. Sometimes I worry that I'm too much and we're not getting enough alone time, but we communicate well and respect each other. So if it ever becomes an issue, it wouldn't be one for too long. Communication is key. Make sure you're talking to your partner and finding out what they need and telling them your needs too. Intimacy is way more important than people realize. Like I've told my wife, yeah, sure, there's lust involved, but there's also interest in making your partner feel good as well. If that interest isn't there, your partner might as well be an adult fun time toy for all they mean to you. This is where I think a lot of people miss the point. Everyone seems to automatically infer that it's physical intimacy that's important. Intimacy is emotional. It's meaningful and vulnerable sharing of one's inner self. It's not what you do in bed. That's not hard. Real intimacy is hard, and it's super fulfilling to be intimate with your partner. So important, and physical intimacy begets emotional intimacy. Physical intimacy is our biggest way of being there for each other. Everyone needs a hug, everyone needs cuddles. Words can't always do what a good, genuinely loving hug can do. Go on holiday together. If you can agree on food, sleep soundly, compromise on activities, and do your own thing one of the days, and not get mad at each other, you stand a good chance of lasting a while. I love my boyfriend to bits and miss him a lot. We don't live together yet, but boy do I like sleeping in my own bed sometimes. Space is healthy. Just because you're in a relationship, it doesn't mean you have to live in each other's pockets. Given the sheer amount of friends that I've discovered I can't stand traveling with, finding someone to meet this comment's criteria seems impossible. Oh dear. When you disagree, remember that you're on the same team. You're supposed to fight a problem, not the other person.
This is such an awesome way of putting that concept.
1. Don't expect the other person to be able to read your mind. 2. Be a team, not opponents. 3. Everybody toots at some point. Number 3 has been a hard thing for me during my current relationship. My significant other has a colostomy bag after battling colon cancer, which has been a huge learning experience in itself. I'm all for being comfortable with the body and all of its weird, icky processes, and I'm usually quick to make that known. But knowing that he physically can't toot makes me way more reluctant to do it around him. Like, I don't want to be a show-off, you know?
My husband blames his toots on the baby sometimes, and for some reason I think it's hilarious to imagine a 7-month-old making that kind of gas.
I know I found the right person. It wasn't easy though, damn. Communication is the foundation upon which everything else is built. They say don't go to bed angry, not because anger does something while you're sleeping, but because it means you didn't communicate properly and you're giving up on trying. Be calm, actively listen, do not dismiss your partner's statements, assume good faith. It's you and me versus the problem, not me versus you. If something's bugging you, talk to your significant other about it. If you feel enraged about something, wait until you're well-fed, well-rested, with warm extremities before talking about it. But talk about it at the first opportunity. Calmly, rationally, and honestly. Keep the discussion limited to that one narrow thing. If something's bugging your significant other, hear them out. Never think, well, I'm not bothered by that, so it's not a problem. Think, my significant other is bothered by this, and that's a problem. If you think the concern is unreasonable, frame the discussion as solving the problem of your significant other is being unhappy. The worst fights and arguments happen over trivial things because it's not the trivial thing that's actually causing the problem. It's probably a series of things or a general lack of satisfaction, and the toothpaste cap being left off is just the instigator of the fight. If you communicate often and openly, these things will not fester, they won't pile up, and you won't get into such fights. Your spouse isn't going to be perfect. You're not going to be perfect. There will be mistakes and misunderstandings. What really matters in a relationship is not being perfect, but how you handle the imperfections of yourself and your spouse in a respectful, reasonable way. Learning how to be bored together is important. You don't have to be on the go, doing stuff and planning stuff and being fun and exciting all the time. It's okay to just sit around and not do anything and not talk to each other. It's not unhealthy, I promise.
This was one of the biggest things I learned when I moved in with my significant other, and what I give as advice to couples just moving in. Especially when it's their first time living with a significant other, you have to learn how to be in the same room without actively hanging out together. When your whole relationship has been dates, it's hard to just be, without feeling like you should be interacting. Getting comfortable just chilling there, doing your own thing, is a good thing. There's so much pressure to do stuff, especially in the age of social media. Other couples do stuff all the time, and everyone is looking for adventures. We must keep up with the carefully manufactured images of other people put out on Instagram. In reality, it's not necessary and can often be a serious source of stress. My husband has been playing Ark all day, and I've been on Reddit or playing The Sims. We watched a couple of episodes of 10th Kingdom earlier, and that's all we've done together today. We're in the same room, but we're not doing the same things. This is not a bad thing. It's called being comfortable together. As someone who just started an official relationship, I got a glimpse of this when I went to visit my boyfriend's place about a week ago. I asked if I could try Overwatch on his PC, since I only have the console version, and he seemed happy to let me go ahead and do my own thing. He booted up Diablo on the couch, and I played a couple of matches. I asked him, "Are you sure this is okay? I can totally get off and spend time with you." He replied, "You're enjoying yourself, right? I'm totally cool just doing my own thing. Just because one of us visits doesn't mean we have to spend every minute together." It made sense when he put it like that, and actually depicts what I've heard about other relationships even when the couples aren't cohabiting. A relationship where I can just be okay playing Baldur's Gate for several hours at a time seems pretty damn good to me. That's the goal. It's interesting when people get confused by this. I always considered relationships to be autonomous. We should both be able to live our own lives, but us being together makes it better. At the same time, romantic relationships are just that. You should be dating your best friend. Your best friends sometimes do nothing with each other. My friend and I once got into a study room after class and did our homework for literally 2 hours with minimal talking. I looked at her around 1 in the afternoon and asked if she's hungry, and we grabbed lunch. It's kind of the same thing. You have to be honest with them, especially when it's hard to do. Me and my boyfriend get uncomfortably real with each other sometimes, and something we've both learned is to listen to criticism without getting defensive.
And when giving criticism, we don't attack each other, no matter how angry or sad we are at each other. I've had him call me out for certain behaviors that nobody has ever called me out on, and I've done the same for him. We're both better people for it because when we get it all out on the table, we have no choice but to work on ourselves. There's a reason it's called the honeymoon phase, and eventually you won't have as much to talk about other than how the day went, or might not always feel those butterflies in your stomach when you think about them. That's when it becomes a test in the relationship, and you both have to work on it to make it work. You'll get into fights, but learn to get over them, or I doubt it will last. Resentment can kill feelings for someone. I wanted to add, I'm not a love or relationship expert by any means. I'm just going off things I've seen and gone through with my own husband. You trade butterflies for familiarity, excitement for comfort. I love the comfort stage. The butterflies are great and all, but being in a constant state of infatuation would get exhausting after a few years. It's so nice to do absolutely nothing with your person, or not see them for a day or two if you don't live together, and still be completely content with them. In an ideal relationship, the contributions are 60-40, where both partners are the ones trying to give 60%. My mom asked an elderly couple who'd been married for decades what their secret was. They said that they act as if being nice to each other is a competition. That's always stuck with me. I've been married for 28 years. When I was engaged, a dear lady, then in her 80s and still very much in love with her husband of 60+ years, told me this: "Just because he's your husband, don't think he requires less regard than your friends. Before you yell at him for something, anything, ask yourself if you would yell at your friend for the same thing." What she was trying to say is that being married, together, is not a free pass to stop being a decent human being. You're going to get annoyed by the socks on the floor, but is it an excuse to fly off the handle? Respect and common courtesy are my recommendation, and you don't need to keep score. There's no winner. I can't praise this enough. I see couples snap at each other all the time over the silliest stuff and wonder how it must feel to be constantly on guard like that. Just be nice to each other. If you can't stand to be nice to each other, call it a day, man. Life is too short. My husband and I have to check in on each other every once in a while. For some reason, it seems like I'm meaner to my husband when my family is around, and he's meaner to me when his family is around. We come up with a phrase that we whisper if we're in public: "Quit being a butthole." We use it to remind each other to be nice without having to justify ourselves at the moment. It really works because if he says it to me, I automatically check myself, even if I don't think I'm being mean. I love him and I never intend on coming off as a butthole. Listen to them, communicate with them, compromise sometimes, and frick them regularly. To elaborate on compromise, it doesn't always mean something we'll both enjoy. At times, it will very likely mean today we do something that my partner likes and that I sparingly tolerate, but tomorrow that reverses. My ex refused to see that side of a compromise. I would see horror films with her, because to me, spending time with her was more important than avoiding seeing a horror film. If I wanted to see a film that she wouldn't like, asking her to see it with me was forcing her to do something that she didn't want, and was therefore unfair. And for the love of God, do not start dating a new person as a way to get out of a bad relationship. That is extremely unfair to the new person you entered into a relationship with. Guy here, this probably sounds simple, but here's what I've learned. Know yourself, where you're at in life. If you're in a crap storm, legal crap, money crap, substances and booze crap, legal crap, you're probably not ready for anything serious. Clean up your act first. Be honest. No matter how fricked up your crap is, if you want to move forward in a serious way, all the cards have got to be on the table. Take it slow, get to know each other, but in the end, no secrets. There is some crap that's nobody's business, but I'm not talking about that. Know her, what she's been through, and what she wants out of life. You both need to be pretty much on board. You need to be heading for the same thing. Kids, buy a house, or gypsy life, doesn't matter. Keep an eye on things. You need to make sure she's doing okay, and let her know you're doing okay. Same with her to you. After that, it's just dodging stupid. Sometimes you have to spend years with crappy people to realize what you deserve. It was never a waste. You needed the experience to figure out what works best for you or what to avoid. You'll never forget your exes. They were there for a reason. Good to get something from the School of Hard Knocks on here. A lot of these is from people who seem to have been happily married or together for a long time. Sometimes you have to muddle your way through until it works. Relationships are work. They aren't always fun, you won't always be madly in love, and you can't put them on a shelf and ignore them. No, but you shouldn't shun the work. Too many of my friends are toxic in their relationships, ending them summarily just because any work is seen as too much. Or let relationships turn toxic because it's easier than maintaining healthy ones. Always be mindful and thoughtful to that person's love map. Like they might need a quick text every morning when you get to work letting them know that you're safe. It makes zero sense to you, but knowing it's something small and means the world to them, well, why the hell not? They might get stressed out, and you helping clean the house for when they finished work might mean more to them than someone else you've been with who wanted flowers to show love. Know what it is that your partner loves and make them feel loved too. And if it's just a text to say you love them and you're safe, it's a 10-second message to type. For frick's sake, that's so little time in the span of an entire day. Why not do it if you know that it makes them happy? A little off topic, but I've found that prioritizing the relationship correctly helps a lot. My roommate is my best friend, but he's a roommate first, a coworker second, and a friend third. We talk about finances and housework completely differently than we shoot the crap. This helps maintain efficient lines of communication regardless of what's going on. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. If they're mean, if they're vindictive, if they use you, if they show you that they don't really care about you, believe them. If they make you feel inadequate, on edge, scared, nervous, unworthy, or like a disappointment, believe them. If they're entitled, narcissistic, sociopathic, manipulative, or unfair, believe them. Life isn't a movie, and you can't fix people who don't want to be fixed. More often than not, they're just who they are. So take off the rose-colored glasses and stop thinking love will find a way. If it isn't working, change it. Don't spend your precious time lamenting over a person who wouldn't genuinely lament over you. This sounds bleak, I know, but relationships and love are supposed to be the most beautiful things in the universe. If your relationship is not improving your quality of life on the aggregate, you need to seriously reassess what you want in life, because you deserve better. You only get so much time to find people in your life that make it worth living. Don't get caught up on people who will make you wish you'd never lived it. Yes, you gotta make sure you're choosing them as advertised, not falling in love with their potential. Don't think your perspective is bleak at all. I think it's balanced and disillusioned. In related vernacular, choosing to believe who someone is a great example of living life on life's terms. It's not always easy, but it gets you out of a lot of unnecessary wrestling matches. Probably not going to get this right, but it hit me the hardest after spending 5 years in a toxic relationship. The idea that everyone in their lives is working toward creating a jigsaw, each part of their life, be it work, relationships, or hobbies, make up parts of that jigsaw. Everyone's is different. Some people's careers make up the edges, the less important and interesting parts. Some people's are their relationships. What's important is the center of the puzzle. That's what people are working towards, their life's goals. When you're in a relationship, your puzzles combine. You eventually start working towards a shared goal. You might make some compromises on what goes to the outer edges, but you should both be working toward the same center. Occasionally, it turns out that the centerpiece you were working towards with your significant other isn't what you thought it was. This sucks, believe me, it really freaking does, but there's nothing wrong with cutting your losses. If you're going for a different jigsaw and the pieces don't fit, you won't get a coherent picture. I hope I explained it right, and yes, it's been taken from Daniel Sloss. He puts it way better than I do, so I would recommend checking him out on Netflix. If you go into a marriage or long-term commitment with the impression that you'll be happy all the time and your life will only change for the better, you're absolutely wrong. Be realistic that there will be days where you won't be able to stand each other, your lives may absolutely hit rough patches, and you will not agree on how or why that situation occurred, or even how to get out of it, and the like. Came here to say this, and when you have kids it tends to get even more difficult and adds even more fights and resentment. Life changes, and so do relationships. The butterflies and weak knees only last so long, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing, it's just different. Don't just look for the person who makes your heart race, look for someone who you can also see being best friends with. Because in the end, that's what you become, best friends. Friends fight, but best friends always, or usually, find a way to work through it together. Oh, and it's also my experience that having one shared hobby and one independent hobby helps too. My husband and I game together, but if I need a break from him or vice versa, I'll go read a book and he'll watch sports or whatever. A study of long-term relationships found that successful relationships have one major thing in common. The spouses are verbally supportive of each other's interests and thoughts. For example, if your spouse is very excited about Pokemon Go and wants to tell you all about the monsters that they caught that day, the supportive spouse would listen to them talk about it and be excited for what they're excited about, even if they don't know how the game's played or they think that it's stupid. The couple that's going to divorce, that other spouse would say, "I don't care, that game's for kids," or be generally dismissive of the conversation and change topics. Support what they're excited about as much as you can, even if it's just listening with a smile on your face while you do a shopping list in your head. Without bypassing the obvious one, which is the importance of communication, my mother always told us how you say something is as important as what you're saying. From the tone to how a subject is approached or delivered can make the difference between opening a dialogue or having an argument. Another good one I've seen around Reddit, it's you, plural, versus the problem. If your significant other has a healthy relationship with their ex, especially when they have kids together, it's a good sign. Don't go to sleep angry is bullcrap, especially if you have little kids. If you and your partner are sniping at one another, disengage and get some sleep if it's possible. Most of the fights my husband and I ever had was because one or both of us were exhausted or hangry. But set a time to pick it back up, please. If my husband just says frick it and goes to bed during an argument, I'm angry. If he says, I need sleep, let's talk tomorrow after dinner, I'm much better. I need to know it's going to be resolved in a timely fashion, and we're both much more reasonable after sleep and cooling down. Choose them. It's not about winning an argument, making a point, having enough time, or giving enough gifts, any of that crap that makes your heart either soar or tremble in the moment. It's about choosing them, knowing them, learning them. Equally as crucial, they choose you back. It's about choosing this person to hold your hand through every moment of every day for the remainder of anything and everything you'll ever experience. Every decision you make has them as a factor. It's about respect and admiration and giving credit where it's due. It's about the truth, about trusting them with the truth, and trusting them to tell it. Choose them, completely. Relationships are not there to fix you. If you aren't happy with yourself, the relationship won't make that a reality. When you want your partner to be fit, attractive, and dress well, don't forget that they want that as well. Want the best for the other person, not for yourself. That's why jealousy is poison. You want your significant other to look good, but only for you? Get a clue. Give them something to want in return. Be a success. Take care of yourself. Learn something every day. Don't waste your time. Be kind and demonstrate that daily. You get what you give. Do the dishes. What's the best witty comeback you've ever witnessed? Back in 10th grade, we had a long-term substitute physics teacher, younger guy, so the tough guys in class wanted to have a pee-pee measuring contest with him, like daily. They constantly made fun of him and joked about his wife. One day, I didn't hear the start of it, but one kid said something like, "I'll bury my face in your wife's chest." Teacher had obviously had enough and said, "No, the only D's you're ever going to see are your grades." The class exploded, nobody ever told on the teacher for saying that, and the guys stopped messing with him. Could a teacher even get in trouble for saying something like that at your school? They certainly wouldn't at mine. They were given wide latitude, especially if provoked. The only case of a teacher getting in trouble for crap was when a math teacher hit a kid for saying something about his, the teacher's, girlfriend. In other words, physical violence could get a teacher in trouble. Words, other than presumably slurs or maybe things that were entirely unprovoked, couldn't. Our geography teacher didn't even use our names, just called us little craps, vermin, emo kid with shampoo deficiency, etc. And we loved her. Sitting in a bar in a country well known for working girls, a guy walks in and starts yelling at a girl, "B-word, you gave me VD." She looked at him and said, "No, I didn't, you bought it." That guy got burned twice. I miss my late uncle. He was the wittiest motherfricker I ever knew. Not a joke teller, just had great one-line comebacks that were never mean, just funny. My favorite was when he went out to eat at a diner with his wife and my mum, just the three of them. The waitress said to him, "Lucky you get to eat with two ladies." My uncle replied, "Yeah, but can you hurry it up? I have to get home to my wife." My Uncle Bob was in a jewelry store a few years ago to buy a present for his longtime girlfriend. They'd been together for over 10 years and had a kid. The manager of the store was helping him as they were fairly busy, and she was called away on some managerial task and handed him to another employee, saying, "Would you help this man? He's looking for a bracelet for his wife." And my uncle said, "Oh no, this is for my girlfriend. I wouldn't spend money like this on my wife." He said the following stunned silence was deafening. He's also pretty deadpan, so they probably thought he was serious. "He seems like a funny guy." Could have been the same guy that came into my restaurant, and when asked by the hostess how he was, he replied, "Well, my wife and girlfriend have left me, so I'm looking for 2 new girls." I mean, let's hope that last one was a joke. There's something to be said for being comfortable enough with your relationship to pull these jokes off directly in front of your spouse, like the first guy did. My mum's dad passed away a couple of days previously. The night before the funeral, a dark and stormy night, the funeral home called 9 p.m. to tell my mother she had forgotten a tie for the suit for tomorrow's showing. She freaked out, realizing that she would have to drive over to the nursing home to fetch a tie and then drive to the funeral home. Dad, who loved himself his clip-on ties and had many of them, said, "Oh, don't go doing that trip on a night like tonight at this time of night. Just grab one of my clip-on ties and take it with you in the morning." My mum, who actually hated that my dad had never learned to tie a tie, responded without missing a beat, "My father would never be caught dead wearing a clip-on tie." Seconds after she realized what she said, she burst into tears. Savaged from beyond the grave. Ow! Grandpa, "In my day, kids were seen and not heard." Grandson, "So are the movies." Was talking to a friend about preferred positions in bed with a partner, and he said, "I like being on the bottom because all I do is frick up anyways." Classic self-roast. Not witnessed firsthand, but heard the recounting or legend many times. Growing up, a friend's older brother nearly got kicked out of high school for this exchange. The teacher, teaching about Jewish law around bestiality that's strictly forbidden, looks at a student and says, "Does this upset you, David?" David says, "Yeah, it means I can't do the deed with your wife anymore." He had to graduate late since he wasn't allowed back into that class. When I was training for my current job, our teacher chose to inform us that he and his wife had chosen not to procreate by saying, "All my children have 4 legs and tails." I have no idea where it came from, but I spat out, "Holy crap, I'd hate to see what your wife looks like." My class busted out laughing, teacher included. He went a little hard on me the next couple of days, but was a good sport in general. We had a lot of fun in that class, and a big part of that was all the crap slinging. Overly condescending boss looking over my work. "Can I ask a stupid question?" Me, on my last week at that job, "You seem overqualified." "You have a lot of options here." "Sure, I've seen you do it before." "In my experience, yes. It's one of your core competencies." I stole this line from American Beauty and paraphrased it, but when my boss would say, "Hey, have you got a second?" I'd answer condescendingly, "For you, boss, I've got at least 30. He had a good sense of humor and thought it was funny every time. Works for, "Have you got a minute?" 2. "For you, I've got 3. Another good response to, "Can I ask a stupid question?" is, "You just did. Do you need to ask another?" I had a supervisor who was making fun of a guy's last name. The guy took it and didn't really say anything. When he was done, the supervisor asked him to email him something, and the guy wanted to clarify the spelling of the supervisor's last name, which was Windsor. He said, "Your name doesn't have D in it, right?" The supervisor said no, so the guy said, "Okay, just ooshbag then," and then walked away. Overheard. First guy, braggart and jerk, "I've got this great new job. I've got over 100 guys under me." Second smartass, "What are you, mowing lawns at a cemetery? How many are on top," is what I would have said. Comedian. I remember the first time I did the deed with someone. Girl in the audience, "Yesterday?" Audience was laughing. Comedian, "I'm glad you remember." Audience screams. I saw that video too. The text really doesn't properly convey how much the audience laughed at the heckler's joke, and how quickly and completely the comedian won the audience back. I was 13 in dance class with some older, catty girls. One of them was picking on me, which ended with her remarking, "Bite me." I responded with, "I'm trying to cut fat from my diet." Entire team heard it and proceeded to chastise me for being so mean. Served her right, the cow. Jimmy Carr was at another comedian's show and he started laughing. If you've seen him, you'll know how distracting that would be. The guy on stage, can't remember who it was, brutally savaged him with, "Jimmy, when I come to see your shows, I don't laugh at your jokes." Up until this moment, I've never appreciated how tough Jimmy Carr's strangled chicken of a laugh is to imitate. My apologies to the listeners. I remember some guy talking about this encounter he had in a grocery store. He was behind this woman who was giving the cashier a bunch of crap over something. She was being a real chump, and finally, sick of her attitude, he tells her to lighten up and stop holding up the line. He's getting kinda teed off that she's double-barreling this kid who's done nothing wrong. So she whips around on him and says, "This is none of your business." And he responds, "Listen, lady, I'm a veterinarian. B-words are my business." Don't know if that story's true, don't care, I thought it was amazing. Also effective, I'm a gynecologist. C-words are my business. I'm a proctologist. Buttholes are my business. Urologist works too. Members are my business. Guy in grade school was really into war history and building army models, fighter jets, aircraft, carriers, etc. He was quiet and smart, but handsome and part of the main crowd, athletic, etc., but very much a history/war buff. At a party, for whatever reason, he was kind of in an argument beef with one of the hotter and more popular girls in class. The greatest comeback I've ever heard was as follows. Girl: "Whatever, Dan, why don't you go play with your model planes?" Guy, immediately without missing a beat, "Great idea, I can land them on your flat chest." The reaction from the crowd added insult to injury as people went bonkers like it was a walk-off home run in a playoff baseball game. Never have I ever heard a better comeback, real or scripted, ever since. During middle school math class, one of the boys, overweight, was being made fun of by this petite girl. "You should put on a bra, you don't need it." "You should take off your bra, you don't need it." The class went, "Oh," and this guy got a few fist bumps. She cried. I've said a similar one. When I was at the beginning of the 7th grade, I didn't have any hair on my legs. This obnoxious girl noticed and said in front of everyone in the class, "Do you shave your legs?" real loud. I responded, "No, and by the looks of it, you don't shave yours either." Her smirk went to an instant frown, and the class went, "Whoa!" like you said, and the teacher laughed. Teacher was real chill. My grandfather died quite a bit before his time, and my grandmother would get a lot of calls for him. One telemarketing firm was particularly pushy, and one day an unbelievably condescending salesperson called and demanded to speak to the man of the household. My grandmother, who was normally restrained to a fault, replied, "Well, as soon as he comes back from the dead, I'll have him call you," and slammed down the phone. They actually did stop calling after that. A student told another one he wasn't the sharpest crayon in the box. That one responded with, "You're the sharpest because no one wants to work with you." Before you read on, please know that my relationship with my 14-year-old son is built on giving each other a hard time. I said a bad word, don't remember which or why. "You're a horrible mother." If I'm so horrible, how did you turn out so awesome? "I spent a lot of time with Dad." I got wrecked. Son: "Can't wait to put you in a home." Me: "I should have drowned you in the bathtub." He's 21 and a butthole. My mum has a wicked sense of humor, and so does my brother. My brother is the middle child. My older sister and I would call my mum at least twice a day each. My brother would rarely call, which hurt her. She started telling him that I guess she failed as a mother and as he doesn't love her. He responded that she could always call him, which has led to at least 3 years of, "To my mother, cold and distant." Cakes, cards, text messages, you name it, from my brother. Had a really witty teacher from my game design class. The vice principal hated him for whatever reason. One day we were all studiously working with our headphones on, programming away while our teacher was up front reading a book. Very available and approachable if we had any suggestions. Then the VP walks into the room. VP: "Mr. Teacher, it has come to my attention that you have absolutely no control over your class. This is unacceptable." Teacher gives him a fairly nonchalant stare, coolly and calmly places his book down, and claps his hands loudly 3 times, which was his very effective way of getting our attention while listening to music. Mind you, the following occurred without us knowing why the VP was there or what he'd said. Teacher: "Okay, class, listen up. I've got an exercise for you. This'll only take a few minutes. First and foremost, everybody stand up." We all stood up in near unison very quickly. "Good. Now all I want you to do is leave the room and stand outside in the hallway, and no matter what this guy says," as he points a finger at the VP, "do not come back into the room until I say so. Okay, go." We all exit the room, a little intrigued by what was going on. "Okay, VP, bring them back in the classroom." We didn't budge. To this day, that's one of my favorite stories to tell. That's a pretty big flex, to be honest, even if it's not quite in the neighborhood of the quick and snappy comebacks and the rest of the thread. Nice job though, teacher. When I was in high school, this very large, overweight kid who always picked on me waited till things got quiet in the classroom and said, "Dave eats wang." Everyone laughed and I got embarrassed and nervous, and a few seconds later, after people finished laughing, I stuttered out, "Yeah, well, you eat everything." I don't know where that came from, but holy crap, the entire room lost it. Haha. Special ed student: "You're so dumb, you make me look like a genius." I was the instructional aide and had to stop the other kid from trying to fight him, but that burn was so sick it got a chuckle out of me. One of my prouder moments. I was 17 and a 12 or so year old kid came up to me. "Hey babe, can I have your number?" "Why? Do you need a babysitter?" Not exactly a comeback or insult, but once in biology class we were going over DNA and genetics. We were talking about how traits can be inherited from parents to offspring flowers, and how some could have all the same traits and some could have mixed traits. The packet we used called the same traits flowers purebred and the other ones mixed. Then a girl in the class asked a question.
Have we ever tried to make purebred humans?
Teacher, yeah, some Germans in the 30s and 40s tried to.
Really? What happened?
World War II, followed by laughter from the rest of the class. I remember reading the possibly apocryphal story of a student being told no excuse would be accepted for not taking a test that was the next day. Some student decided to be funny and said, "What about sheer exhaustion from all the climaxes?" To which the teacher replied quickly, "I guess you'll have to write it with your other hand then." Churchill and some lady were having an argument. Lady: "Winston, if you were my husband, I would put arsenic in your morning coffee." Churchill: "Madam, if you were my wife, I'd drink it." Oh boy, have I got an answer for this one. So I'm sitting in my chemistry class, and there's a dude sitting ahead of me, Jeff. He's just minding his own business when two other dudes behind me, Butthead 1 and Butthead 2, proceed to start calling his name and ignoring him whenever he turns around. Just trying to annoy him, I suppose. Important to note, Jeff is a pretty intelligent guy, whereas Butthead 1 and Butthead 2 are so inbred they could be a sandwich. After this happens a few times, Jeff finally turns around and drops this line. "Hey, Butthead 1, can I borrow one of your extra chromosomes?" Overheard two guys in a restroom while at the urinals. Guy 1 tries to embarrass Guy 2. Guy 1, "What's with that red ring on your wang? You need to get that checked out." Guy 2, "It's just your mom's lipstick from when I saw her last night." Decent comeback, but the real burn is going to come from whatever red ring condition that guy has on his eggplant. The class clown of my classmates, let's call him K, was known for notoriously teeing off teachers with crude, obscene, and insulting jokes. Well, one day, K decided to ask a 30-something-year-old teacher, "Miss, ever had a baby?" In which the teacher replied with a simple no, but that's not where it ends. K then said to the teacher with a face that only appears on the stupidest of people, "Well, I could give you one," which caused a few sniggers in class. The corners of the teacher's mouth curled into a smile, and with grace she walked up to her desk and said, "No, Kay, I don't want to adopt you," which caused the whole class to erupt into laughter and Kay to shut up for the rest of that year in English. This is still one of the best comebacks I've ever heard, so simple yet so powerful. Oh, you might be able to get away with that in math class. Maybe history. But that kid had no chance against someone who had a far better grasp of the English language than he did. Me and a buddy were at GameStop just browsing and hanging out. Employee comes up to us and asks if we need help finding anything. We told him we were just looking. This was right after the Nintendo DS XL just came out, and he starts trying to sell us on it. Me never having been the handheld gamer type, I told him I wasn't really interested. He decided his ace in the hole would be touting the newer, bigger 4-inch screen. Having enough, I responded, "Take it from me, 4 inches isn't that impressive." That was the end of his sales pitch. One time I was at a coffee shop with my good friend and I saw a dime on the floor. Jokingly, I gave it to him and said, "There, you can buy yourself a life with this." It kinda sounds funnier in my language, and he quickly answered, "I'll just buy yours and give you back the change." I definitely envy people the ability to fire this kind of thing from the hip. I think I could memorize something like this and hold it ready for the right occasion, only to still completely mess it up when the time came. In high school, there was a jerk who was a local star athlete and was pretty much the high school cool athlete bully stereotype. His attempts to pick on people were pretty lame, but people always laughed at them because he was cool, and you always laugh at what the cool kid says. He liked to do the, "An 80-year-old woman called, she wants her upper back strength back," kind of jokes. He also wanted to go to Cornell on a wrestling scholarship. Not only did he not get the scholarship, he also didn't get accepted to Cornell. One day, when he was in the middle of his "so-and-so called" routines, I said, "Hey, Cornell called. Oh wait, never mind, no they didn't." Actually, I didn't think of that until the next day and is one of my life's greatest regrets. The jerk star called and… Was he a paper salesman named Andy? No, Andy got into Cornell. Douche frat guy walks into a circle of my friends at a party. Frat guy, "Is this the intellectual circle?" My friend, "Not anymore." Was he just trying to be friendly? With my friend at the bar where his girlfriend was working. She stopped by our table and spouted out general complaints about having to work. My friend hands her a straw. She just stares at him blankly. He says, "Suck it up." I've used this one before on a coworker when I worked at the convenience store/deli. She was complaining about some nonsense or another, and I seized the opportunity. The look on her face was priceless. I was just so casual about it, like I barely looked up from what I was doing when I handed it to her. I don't think she even realized I was listening. Our boss found it absolutely hilarious. Sitting around a fire, drinking, telling lies and whatnot, and a female friend asks, "Out of 10, how would you rate yourself in bed?" Quick as a flash, friend of mine says, 11. Come on, be serious. Who am I going to tell? Hopefully, everyone. 11. I used to work in retail. Myself and the head of grocery had a call with a supplier where they were going to push really harsh trading terms with us in the short term because we were updating our contract to hold them more accountable for poor performance, delivery, etc. After the call, everyone was very busy discussing that we would just respond in kind later on. The head of grocery pipes up and says, "Yeah, we're going to get screwed in the butt now, but at least they'll get crap on their wangs." When I was a high school teacher, our assistant principal was caught having an affair. She divorced her husband, but it was all over the news. A few weeks later, a kid hung a banner in the hallway that read, "I can't cheat in school, but Mrs. Blank can cheat on her husband." Cool. Pretty good comeback from a 16-year-old. Must be a pretty small town for an affair to be on the news. Extremely small town. Tune in at 7 o'clock to see who hasn't cut their grass this week. There was a guy smarting off to the new guy dating his ex. "So, what's it like inside a hoo-ha that's used material?" The new guy, "Oh, only the first 2 inches were used. The other 6 are plain sailing." My wife gets mean on vodka. Not like starting a fight mean, more like destroy all ego mean. Winding down a party, close to blackout drunk, and most of us can't even remember how the conversation ended up, with chubby friend insulting wife's lack of chest and implying she should go buy some boobs. Wife says, "But those are expensive." Chubby friend cups his moobs and says, "These did cost me quite a bit." The wife closes the night with, "Just how much do you have to spend at Burger King to get a bosom like that?" I have an issue learning spoken language, so when I started French, I was doing horribly despite how much I was working. During a parent-teacher conference, my French teacher told my parents that I was incapable of learning French. My dad leaned in and said, "Madam, there are mentally impaired children in France who are capable of learning French. He's capable of learning, you're just incapable of teaching." I was tending bar at a place in Buffalo back in the 90s. Pretty girl at the bar lifts her glass to take a drink and accidentally spills some down the front of her shirt when she gets the lip of the cup to her mouth. The 4 to 5 people around her say nothing, and without missing a beat, she laughs and says, I must be full." What's an unexpectedly well-paid job? Boiler operator. Get paid $35 an hour to play Skyrim on Switch while watching Netflix. Just have to find one that's all operator and no maintenance. Which state do you work in? It's really hard to get a job as a boiler operator, especially without a license. I just wanted to chime in. I got hired as a boiler operator in Hawaii. Pay started at $38 an hour, and I didn't need any license or education. We did all the training in-house. Hello? Yes, I'd like to apply to be your assistant. A job in Hawaii? I'll be there as soon as I can. I work at home as a closed captioner broadcaster on the news. I make my own schedule and make between $35 to $65 an hour depending on the job. Large investment to get started, but significantly worth the payout. What qualifications does your job require? Very interesting. You have to go through a course. The course is $800 per month, and you work at your own pace. I worked while I did it at my main job, so it took me about 7 months to complete. Most people are between 6 and 9 months, though. Between the course and all the equipment, it's about a $10,000 investment to start, but very much worth it, and you make the investment back very quickly. Keep in mind voice recognition software for CC is getting better every day. An office job, but you're secretly on Reddit. That's my job. Shush. Airline dispatcher. A girl I dated many years ago I met because she was living in my town training to be an airline dispatcher. There are just a handful of schools that teach it. I had no idea what an airline dispatcher was, let alone how much money they get paid. Dispatchers at FedEx can make $150,000 per year or more. It also gives you a lot of options to advance in an airline, like being a station chief at an airline. The girl I dated had a dream to one day be Air France station chief in Tahiti. I don't know if she made it or not. I've googled this position, and to me it is not at all surprising that this is a very well-paid job. From my uneducated perspective, coordinating airline operations over an airline or entire airport seems incredibly stressful. Court reporting. Stenography is a tough skill to learn, but plenty of court reporters earn over $100K, and no college degree required. although most court reporters will need to be certified. There's a shortage of them too. I work as the videographer and they're like magicians. Not many people finish the school for it though, and most of it is online now. The downsides though, they're 99% of the time not employees, so they have to supply their own insurance, pay their own transportation fees, and buy their own machines, which are expensive. They do make a lot of money though. I think it evens out for sure. I'm currently in court reporting school and holy crap is it hard, but I enjoy it. I should be finished later this year and can't wait to start working. It is very hard. And then you can get out there and feel overwhelmed for a while. But stick with it, there's such a need right now. Fun career and you can do so many different things. My mom's been a court reporter for maybe 10 years, one of them freelance. She got a job with a county judge. She gets like $60K salary and only has to go into work when her judge has court 2 to 3 days a week. She also does a lot of freelance transcribing that brings in bank too. Definitely a stable career, would recommend. I'm a stenographer and have been since I was 17. I also transcribe police interviews. In the last week I've heard 1. A man describing in graphic detail how he dismembered his teenage daughter and buried her. 2. A man detailing how he did his 7-year-old daughter a favor when he committed the unspeakable act against her. 3. An 18-year-old graphically describing her home invasion and the terrible things the intruders did to her. 4. A murder case involving the nitty-gritty of stabbing wounds. I'm squeamish and get all queasy hearing the wound details. And 5. A coronial inquiry into the burning death of a firefighter. Plot twist, I only worked 3 days last week. Technical writing. If you have the ability to take complex technical information and simplify it according to the reading audience, you can make well over 100K annually. People ridicule English degrees until they find out how much can be earned as a technical writer. Mobile crane operator. Union guys pull over 200K, and it's a trade that's pretty easy on the body. Operating engineers have a surprisingly high occurrence of back, neck, and wrist injuries. They do make a ton of money though. Knees, too. Those cabins and large machinery are not made for comfort, although I hear newer ones are a big improvement. Can confirm. OE for 10 years and have many issues with carpal tunnel, back pain, knees, and so on. I regularly worked 12 to 20-hour shifts though. It's not uncommon to run equipment that has no AC. Once ran a drill in Southern California where the heat in the cab was around 140 plus around noon. It sucked so bad. We started work at 1 a.m. to get enough time in the day. Anyone that runs equipment long enough has endless stories of misery and pain. Yet, I miss it so much. I don't know if this is true in other cities, but train and bus operators in Boston make bank. I've rarely met a higher paid, less engaged group of employees in my life, and I work in recruiting. I have a friend who's AmITheA bus mechanic. He makes so much money, he can retire at 45. Plus, if you put in 20 years, you get a pension of half your pay for the rest of your life. I fix hospital beds. Will be making 100K within my first 2 years with full benefits. I also have full control over my hours. Power linemen make bank. Not a lot of people even know about it. Insanely dangerous job though. 2 linemen died in our small town because some person or family didn't shut their breaker off when they hooked up their generator while they were working on it. Electricity is freaking terrifying, and sometimes even the smallest things missed can have major consequences. Just for clarity, the situation was during a natural disaster and sleep depravity was most definitely the root cause of the deaths. Linemen were working and barely sleeping for a week straight before backup could come. But the lack of sleep in itself is a major danger, as is the weather they sometimes work in, or the electricity itself. Linemen take safety seriously, but one thing going wrong can end in disaster. Even something as simple as flipping a wrong switch or forgetting a single piece of safety equipment. But as far as things go, electricity is probably one of the last things on Earth you want any accident with. I drive machinery in a coal mine in Australia. I make about 170K. Even our new trainees are paid pretty well, about $48 per hour. I think it ends up being close to 90 to 100K. Easy money for sitting on your ass in an air-conditioned cab. Longshoreman. If you're a senior member of a union, you make absolute cake, 180K plus a year. Yeah, it seems anything involving very heavy machinery is a good, dependable way to make a solid amount of money. Wish I'd figured that out earlier in life. Becoming a locksmith changed my life. Well paid, and I get to help people out. I love it. Self-employed cleaning services. I don't know exactly what to call them. My parents started getting paid $35 an hour cleaning a community center to $50 from cleaning offices. My mum started it, and then my dad joined in to help her with the hours and taking care of the house and kids. Eventually, my mum got good contacts and started cleaning the offices of managers from factories, Sacramento politicians, and stuff alike. Can't express how proud I am of my mum. She turned all those crappy Hispanic cleaning lady jokes into something bragworthy. Utility lineman. There's a developing shortage nationwide due to baby boom retirements. It's well-paid base, but the overtime is fabulous. I have a couple of friends who got into this after they left the military. They all make well over 100K. Storm season brings in tons of overtime. They're all in their late to mid-20s buying houses. UPS drivers can make close to 100K if you stay there long enough. Blew me away when I first heard that. My uncle was a UPS driver in Maine for 30 years. He had to quit due to an unrelated injury, but I'm pretty sure he was making high 80K to low 90K before that. Some of the happiest people in society too, especially if you're single. How so? You know the old jokes about the mailman being your dad? The UPS are those guys. Yeah, it's really good money, but there are some negatives. The worst is that you're in a truck with no air conditioning that is mostly sealed up if you're in the back. In Florida, that's freaking miserable. Also, they have polyester uniforms. Other drawbacks include your route for the day gets put together by some fricking optimization program that parcels out minute by minute how long you're going to take. It does not take into consideration traffic jams, finding parking spots inside of a busy city. It just calculates that you drive there and then assumes you're going to find parking right out in front, and that the elevator works, and that someone is home at all, and that you're standing there with 10 60-pound parcels containing a complete weightlifting bench plus weights, and you look up the 3 flights of stairs with no elevator and you know you've got approximately 2 to 3 minutes per package. Yeah, nah, frick that. Oh, and plus you're going to be on the front lines of receiving feedback, so if anyone is getting cursed out for a bad delivery, it's you first. Ditch digger, actually directional boring. Guy I know is literally a ditch digger, but got into this by renting the specialized equipment just at the right time and right place. Fiber optic build-out in the 1990s. He will also say that he made it simply by being reliable and trustworthy. I do not know exactly how much he makes, but he has an 80-foot sport fisherman, probably cost 7 to 10 million, and he brought a $4 million property on a whim. I was a bathroom attendant in a fancy restaurant, made $100 a night in cash to do next to nothing. Well, they don't do nothing. Their purpose seems to be to make the bathroom experience half as convenient and 1000% more awkward, and they always succeed. I'm pretty sure they're only in there to keep people from doing hard substances in the bathroom. Not a good sign regardless. Oh, and to stop people doing the deed in the stalls. The year I got out of high school, I picked up a job at a private country club, working the bag room. When I spotted a member, I'd grab their reserved private cart from their garage and load their cubs on it that they stored in the bag room. A couple of damp towels hung on the back, pencils, scorecards, and everything waiting by the time they stepped up. Place was primarily executives and whatnot for like the major automotive companies here in Michigan. I made a couple of hundred each day in tips. During a couple of tournaments that took place, I went home with around $500 in my pocket. I took home so much each day that I kept forgetting to pick up my paycheck, which was something like another $400 each week. Late 90s minimum wage. Only part of the job I hated was using the picker to get the balls off the range. There was always some butthole trying to use me for target practice. Funeral director is a great paying job with not a whole lot of schooling. That's what I do, and I make about $75,000. If you have a strong stomach, cleaning up death and crime scenes pays very well and requires very little education. I have a friend who did this. It's definitely paid well, but he talked about some things he saw, and I don't know if I could do it myself. Yeah, I think I could deal with working around dead bodies, but the second any sort of horrific accidents or murder was involved, I think it would begin to get too much. There is a job in my country where you're paid something like 10,000 euros per mission to touch newborn chicks and determine whether they're boys or girls. The ones near me must be really bad at their job because they seem to have like a 50% success rate when we buy chicks, so we may as well leave it up to chance. Well, there's also that part where you put male chicks in a grinder all day. In some states, corrections officers make insane money with just a GED and a willingness to work overtime. Let me specify some states, guys. Some states. In California, those guys can make $125K a year with little overtime. Bartending. Some people know, but the overwhelming majority don't. If I only worked 20 hours, 2 days a week this year, weekends, I would make close to $50K. If I really tried and worked 2 solid jobs 5 days a week, I could easily hit close to, if not over $100K. This doesn't apply to every bar or bartender. You're not going to make this kind of money at an Applebee's or a super franchised corporate establishment. So true. I have a good friend that bartends in the Spanish club in Miami, and he said if he decided to work 4 days a week instead of working 1 to 2 days a week, he could probably make $100K a year. Hot dog vendors can earn 6 figures per year. Buddy of mine went to Hopkins back in the day and noticed that the lacrosse games, while well attended, had no vendors. Nobody seemed to want the job, so he asked if he could. Year later, he had all of his friends bagging hot dogs the night before and was buying drinks and chips by the truckload. Sold everything for $1 and came home after every game with trash bags full of dollars. Year or so later, the school realized what a cash cow it was and took over the gig, but my buddy had pretty much paid for school by then. Collecting golf balls. Saw on the news a guy makes over $250,000 traveling around and using scuba gear getting golf balls. I mean, that's more scuba diving.
If in Florida, that's very well worth it, considering for the sole reason of fricking alligators. It's the same with underwater welding. No one's paying you for the welding part as much as they're paying you for the possibility that some tube sucks you in and you die.
I don't know if it's surprising, but one people don't think about, selling ad space on local broadcast stations. I do it and make more than most families do in my area, and I'm at a smaller market. Going into a medium one can put you well into six figures. I work as a lunch lady. I get school vacations off, summers off, and weekends. No nights or even really afternoons. It's amazing. I also get benefits and every year I get a raise. So between the money and the time off, the job is 100% worth it. Furry artist. Seriously, furries will shovel out so much money for commissions and then tip on top of that. If you get a big enough following, it can be surprisingly well paid. Contractors for household moving companies with 18-wheelers can gross between $200 and $400K in a year.
I'd be interested to know how much is profit considering the running costs plus insurance for an 18-wheeler, let alone the cost of an 18-wheeler.
Train driver for London Underground. Heavily unionised industry and London's dependency on the network means they've been able to demand an enviable package. High base pay, high rates over time, and travel passes for the family. Document specialist for utilities. Basically, you have to know someone to get into it, but I went from making under $40K for an office admin to $120K as a doc specialist. No college requirement, often people just get their spouses or siblings on because they've worked in an office before. As a general rule, this is terrible for anyone who actually knows what they're doing on the job, but whatever. A lot of times I'm just getting paid to hold down a desk. YouTubers who just copy Reddit posts into a voice thing and then upload it with the text in the background. And for those saying people who actually speak and make it unique aren't that bad, I agree. I still don't watch them, but I agree. My point is those YouTubers who literally just copy-paste into a text-to-speech program that they found on the internet.
Haha, this thread will probably get reviewed by one of them, and this comment will be subsequently skipped.
First of all, I've called you, second commenter. And I agree, the ones who use AI are terrible. Good thing that doesn't happen here. Other than that, no comment. I think a lot of this thread is really misleading. First, everyone is saying, I knew a guy, or I made 100K, and while I don't doubt that these are true things people are sharing, it isn't what someone else can expect to make. We should be talking about median salary or medium wage. Second, especially since we aren't talking about median salaries, almost nobody included the location. A few people did. Making 80K in New York or San Francisco is like making 30K in a small Midwestern town, according to most of the living/salary comparisons websites. The real truth is, a reasonably free market is going to adjust wages based on supply and demand, meaning that a job that is either difficult to do because it takes lots of skill, training, or education and pays well, like a heart surgeon, or if a job is dirty, dangerous, or otherwise unpleasant, and has to pay well to attract candidates, like certain fishermen, or a job whose wages are high due to external factors, like a union or lobbying body that sets wages which results in far more candidates than jobs, like my union painter uncle that makes 120K instead of the national medium of 40K. Top comment is a garbage collector in New York City. First, 100K in New York City is the equivalent of 40K in a small Midwestern town, and that wage is artificially high, resulting in far more applications than jobs, meaning odds are you can't get that job. National median is 25K. Next top is aircraft dispatcher. National median salary is 32K according to Glassdoor and Salary.com, but 40K if you believe the Airline Dispatcher Federation. Finally, a lot of people are talking about starting a business doing X, which is entirely different than working X on a salary. Median salary of a plumber is 45K in the US. They don't get the hourly wage they bill you for, and if they start doing their own plumbing business, they need to pay for insurance, benefits, and additional taxes, advertising, and a million other things on top of just being a plumber. They also have to deal with all the hours when they don't have to work. Higher risk, but higher potential reward. A successful business person running a plumbing company who has about 10 employees might make 200K or more per year, but they also lose 100K.
and it doesn't really compare to a salary, especially today with all the salary information we have available to us. A job that pays a lot, that doesn't suck, that anyone can do, isn't going to keep paying a lot. Trader Joe's managers. General managers of stores make $100,000 plus. Assistant store managers make $60,000 to $80,000 per year. Not bad for working grocery. Scrum Masters in software development industry. They're paid six figures for basically setting up meetings and being cheerleaders. They don't have any responsibility for delivery of work, and they don't have any work beyond what I described. My Scrum Master is a little bit more valuable than you describe, but it is an odd thing worth pointing out in this thread. He's not a useless toady. Half of the value is having a single point of contact for "what's going on?" type questions, so that the workers can work and the need-to-knowers can get the information they need to know. I'm a gardener. There's a serious lack of folks willing to do manual labor in the outdoors year-round. Most commercial properties have to maintain a certain amount of green area in our city. Hospitals and other places like that need legitimate crews to do the work with professionalism. No catcalling or spitting or swearing, etc., including bonded employees and good insurance and equipment, etc. As a result, we're in demand and we get paid surprisingly well. No university education is needed, low barrier to entry, great pay, and job security. Dog groomer. It's a weird industry though, and a skill that really has to be learned hands-on. Grooming schools can be a good start, but I know great groomers that never went to school for it, and terrible groomers that spent thousands on classes. Just being good at handling dogs is the best foundation for success. It's not the easiest job in the world. It's largely commission-based, and if you're lucky, you get any benefits out of it. But if you get enough practice to be good at it and build up a loyal clientele base in a decently affluent area, it's very good money. The haircuts I do range from $70 to $175, and I'm paid 50%, which averages out to around $30 to $35 an hour most days. Not everyone tips, but those that do usually tip $5 to $20 per dog, and because I do about 40 dogs in an average week, that's an extra couple of hundred in my pocket. So if you don't mind working on your feet all day, sustaining repetitive motion injuries, not taking lunch breaks, and dealing with insane customers, then picking the crap out of dogs' buttholes is a good living. San Francisco Poop Patrol. A 10-person team, and all they do is go around the city and clean up human feces, which is apparently a problem there. They make around $80,000 a year, plus pensions and benefits, which bring the total to about $150K. Not even kidding. Let's go scoop poop. But it's in San Francisco, one of the most expensive cities in the country. Yeah, $80K is still really struggling in San Francisco. Some of those people pooping in the street make $80K a year. Underwater welding pays a tremendous amount. The only one I know personally retired comfortably in his 40s. Given how dangerous underwater welding is, I'd say the pay isn't surprising at all. Notary clerks. $30 just for signing a document and putting it in a register. The HVAC dude who used to come to my work to clean our furnaces made six figures and retired at 40. Now he lives in Mexico and teaches people to scuba dive. At the right place, waitressing. I got tipped $800 waitressing at a bowling alley for a team-building company party. You pick the right restaurant and just get good at it, and you make bank. I know people who work at mid-range restaurants who make $80K a year, and you know they don't truthfully declare the tips they get. What's the most cringeworthy way someone has tried to show you they were quirky? I had a coworker in a retail environment who was always going on to us about how special he was and how he saw the world differently than the rest of us slobs, because he was a writer. Customer with lazy eye comes up to the register. Coworker to customer, "Hey, I see you've got a lazy eye. I notice things like that because I'm a writer." Super awkward checkout ensued. "I notice things like that because I'm a writer." I couldn't help but read that in Ralph Wiggum's voice. My uncles are both published writers. One of them is the most humble guy you could ever meet. The other is so fricking egotistical. I mean, he's clever and very smart, but he makes everything about himself. He can't stand to be wrong. He practically had a fit when my 15-year-old brother beat him in a pull-up contest. And he's like in his late 50s. He doesn't wear glasses despite really needing them because he doesn't want to look old. Regularly almost crashes and puts his children at real risk because of his vanity. I knew a girl in high school who used to diagnose herself with mental illness based on, to the best of my knowledge, Year 11 psychology class and online quizzes. She would also try to one-up anyone who had a legitimate, medically diagnosed mental illness, despite having, in her words, major depression, anxiety, OCD, bulimia, Munchausen's, schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, and antisocial personality disorder. She refused point-blank to ever see a doctor and have any one of these diagnoses confirmed or treated. If you're gonna fake mental illness, you might as well do something unique like Morgellons, narcolepsy, Alice in Wonderland syndrome, or if you were really committed, trichotillomania. Lame. I knew a girl who fakes sneezes when she walks outside. She found out only 25% of people sneeze when they see bright sunlight, so she wanted to be part of a minority. I have no idea why she does this, but her fake sneeze is this loud, rough, manly-sounding thing. It's comical how different it is to her real sneeze. Wait, sun sneezes are a minority? I had no idea. It's a genetic quirk. I didn't realize it was weird growing up because my entire family did it, except my mom. I was confused when I found out other kids don't have to sneeze when it was sunny outside. We had a girl that would have an uncontrollably loud hiccup at the most inappropriate times. Moment of silence during the Memorial Day thing, concerts, you name it. Anytime there was silence, she just had to get everyone to look at her. My hiccups end with a burp and I hate them. A subteacher in 3rd grade really ripped on me for them. I mean, this just sounds like the oral version of what my butt seems to want to do at the most inopportune and public moments. So the inappropriate hiccups has my sympathy. A guy I went to high school with was convinced he was a vampire, and once he actually bit my friend during class because he couldn't help himself. A person bit me once, at a party. It was unexpected. I just reflexively hit her in the face while her teeth were still on me. Maybe I tried to push her off me, maybe I tried to hit her so she let go. I'm honestly not sure, but I do know I didn't think about it first. She got a bloody nose. I had bite marks on my shoulder. She said, "What the frick?" I said, "What the frick to you? What are you doing?" She said, "You frickin' hit me. What's the matter with you?" I said, "Me? You fricking bit me. The frick is the matter with you?" She said it was cute when she does stuff like that and that I was some kind of woman-hitting psycho. I was asked to leave the party and most definitely did. 15 years later, still one of the strangest experiences of my life. She brought a fricking ukulele everywhere. At first you'd think, wow, a cute girl with a ukulele, I bet she's really cool, but you'd be falling into her trap. She barely knew 2 chords and was a complete moron. I knew a lady like this where in high school people would be like, "Sweet, can you play me a song?" causing her to snap, "No," at them and have people just be confused. I had a hipster neighbor who would strum his ukulele and smoke his pipe outside while his kids rode bikes. Oh, that's so wholesome. Just a dude chilling while looking out for his kids. This girl I know constantly talks up how much she loves nerdy things like no other girl is into. Nerdy things like Game of Thrones, Star Wars, and Lord of the Rings. Yep, very unpopular entertainment no other girl is into. Her name was Trinity. She said she had multiple personalities, 3 to be exact. She was lying. I asked her parents, they had no clue what I was talking about. He'd wear a paper Krispy Kreme sailor hat every day. I saw bullies rip his hat to shreds and he'd just reach into his roller backpack and pull out another one. Never saw him without it. What a frickin' power move though. The fact that he pulled one out of his backpack is big wang energy. The fact that his backpack rolled is even bigger wang energy. Friend of mine went through a super proud to be Italian phase about the time Sopranos aired. He refused to eat his mum's cooking one night because it was too Irish. There were many other things he'd do to try and convey a mob connection. He was part Irish and eventually became a cop. What kind of Italian refuses his mama's cooking? What kind of Italian survives refusing his mama's cooking? A non-Italian. This one guy would put blue Powerade in a Windex bottle and spend the day taking it out of his backpack and squirting it in his mouth. High school. There were plenty of other things, but this one stands out. Isn't that a scene from Scrubs? I kind of remember the janitor doing that to freak out JD in one episode. Had a class with a guy that wanted people to think he was a nerd. I guess to him, nerds wear large glasses. Only problem was he didn't need glasses. He started showing up to class wearing 3D glasses from the movie theater with the lenses popped out. My first thought was, why would someone wear cardstock paper glasses with the red and blue cellophane ripped out? It took me reading your comment to realize or remember that's not what they give out anymore. This guy in my high school would wear cat ears and carry a stuffed bunny around. I think he was trying to look like an anime character or something. Anyway, the most cringeworthy part, he would constantly meow in class. Not like meow, but more like yeah, like an anime cat or whatever.
My oldest kid is on the spectrum, and I've had to monitor and restrict his interest in anime because when he watched too much of it, he would start having inappropriate and stylized reactions that were super off-putting. Like in anime, apparently when a girl they like approaches, they sometimes do a freeze frame type of the character freaking out that has their arms and legs all stretched out in midair, making a horrible noise. Now, picture a 13-year-old leaping up and hollering in Dollarama because a pretty girl came into the aisle. Sorry, kiddo, humans don't actually do that, you're cut off again.
You should let him binge Arrested Development and see what he comes up with. Yes, let him learn from Tobias, Buster, and George Michael Maharis how to behave around women.
Look, if I can watch a real kid who is any one of those 3 characters from Arrested Development, my life will be that bit better. And it can't be that different to my friends and I just constantly quoting it to each other all the time. Advise an anime club in my high school, and I fricking hate these kids. I got a call from the front office one day. I was told to get my butt down there and stop whatever was going on in front of the office. I run over there and see one of the girls, ears and tail on, is crawling around on the ground rubbing on people's legs. I told her to get up and she hissed at me. I literally had to write her up for hissing at me. Same group made up their own Naruto village. Many asked what I did to deserve this. When it began 11 years ago, it was a group of kids who needed a place to be. They had a hard time making friends and getting a hold of anime was hard. I started it to give them a place to belong and hopefully teach them about the line between fan and obnoxious. Hundreds of kids have passed through it and had a better time in high school for it. Then there are those who don't want friendship, they just want attention, at any price.
I love how this happened and the solution was, I don't know, call whoever advises the anime club, they'll know what to do.
Damn it, we've got cat girls in the lobby, call the weeb wrangler. Imagine birthing a kid and raising it for 15 years for it to amount to that.
Teenagers are inherently dumb and weird. What's worse is that there was a guy that came into the nightclub I worked in with a trench coat, cat ear headband, tail, and cat eye or red contact lenses. At 25 plus years old, it's time to outgrow that phrase. I'm all for self-expression, but there's a line between it and ostracizing yourself from society.
The receptionist at the sign-in desk I do my clinical for school at is normal while back at work, but once she gets home, she literally changes into her goth style. I mean the super pale foundation, black lipstick, crazy eyeliner and eyebrows, piercings, she still wears trip pants occasionally, crazy tutus, black fingerless gloves, and she has a freaking pet crow named Malice and 3 black cats. She's into witch or Wiccan crystals, and she believes that they have healing powers, if that makes sense. And she takes her acceptable for work wig off and rocks a purple faux hawk, her actual hair. I didn't believe her until she showed me pictures. I thought she was hazing me because I was the new kid. I was bewildered. That's how you be your weird self without shame and without letting it ruin your social or professional life. The kind of people who proudly say they are a butthole. It annoys me so much. A girl I used to hang out occasionally liked to pretend she was some kind of bad biker B-word. She talked about riding every chance she got. She showed people pictures and dressed the part. I'd always hit her up when I was going riding to see if she wanted to come along. It gets old being the only woman around. She'd always have an excuse and claimed not to ride if it had rained that week and so on and so forth. Would always give me heck about getting a real bike. I ride a CRB 1000RR and she had an 883 Sportster. She was once complaining to me that she only got her baby out 3 times that year. Which, you base your entire identity on something you do 3 times a year?
Ah, gotcha, one of those Harley people.
There's 2 types of Harley owners. The ones that are like, hell yeah, motorcycles, and the ones that are like, Harleys are the only motorcycle. Saw this kid in a class who would always try to walk like Captain Jack Sparrow. Anybody who wears those fricking normal people scare me shirts. Jeez. Normal people scare me, people scare me. About 10 years ago, around 2009 or 2010 or so,
I'm into some pretty underground, obscure music.
Oh really? That's cool. What kind of bands?
Korn, Avenged, Sevenfold, Metallica. What? I'm convinced some teenagers go out of their way to feel persecuted so they can find an identity to call their own. Because good gosh, that's almost as funny as the one girl who seriously, unironically claimed that the Offspring and Green Day red jumpsuit apparatus were hardcore punk. More so annoying than cringeworthy, but people who pretend to have a mental illness because they think it makes them unique. Those Funko Pops and not being perfectly lined up triggers my OCD so hard. Nope, you like things to be orderly, totally normal. Having to check the light switch 20 times to the level that you end up being late for things, that's more what OCD is.
Yeah, I never really knew what OCD was really until someone told me about it. He said he always has to hit the ground twice when he picks up something he dropped and pick up a pen 3 times on crap. Sucks. Oh crap, probably everything I did in high school. I've just repressed the whole 4 years.
Same. I embarrassingly strove to be a manic pixie dream girl. Ugh.
If you can't look back on the things you did when you were younger and cringe, then you haven't matured. Had a girl in my high school who legitimately believed she was an anime girl and was just born in the wrong body. She would listen to these subliminal "become an anime girl" YouTube videos, end everyone's name in san, wore a schoolgirl outfit every day, I went to a public school, and would sometimes say random Japanese words or phrases because her brain wasn't fully accumulated to America. Needless to say, she was a fully white girl from the Midwest.
I love these because the people who act like this have absolutely no idea how Japan really is.
Anyone else noticing the overrepresentation of anime kids in this topic? Apparently it's a way of making yourself very memorable, to say the least. Actually, all the ones I knew in school were fine.
I thought I was hot stuff because I didn't like reading. I kinda regret that now.
My daughter, a bright, wonderful, hilarious mum of 2 and wife, has the best friend that goes around bragging to people how she never reads anything more challenging than a copy of US Magazine. She finds it the hairdresser. The friend is 42, and frankly, we're less than thrilled they've been friends for 20 plus years. Before I get judgy comments, there is a ton of other crap I'm leaving out. She's any parent's basic definition of a bad influence. The no reading thing would be 50% easier to swallow if the friend didn't insist on injecting her opinion on a wide variety of world affairs, politics, entertainment, etc. To paint a picture, I'm 100% not making this up. Her life's ambition is to become a for real housewife. She'll marry anyone and move anywhere to get on reality TV. She actually went to Miami from Northern California on vacation to specifically go to a club that was depicted in the Real Wives of Miami Beach episode just to go to that club, and was turned away at the door, and had the unmitigated gall to do the "Do you know who I am?" at the doorman. I'm acquainted with someone who will pack her cat in a carrier, drive to the local university, no small feat considering the parking situation and 40,000 students, and push the cat around the quad in an antique baby carriage. All the while she'll make exasperated social media posts about how rude people are to stare at her or talk to her. As far as I know, she doesn't walk the cat around her own quiet residential area.
A little unrelated, but there was this old guy that would walk his dog around on campus last year. Big loping golden retriever that was so friendly and sweet. The dog's owner was also really kind. I got to talking to him one day, and he revealed he likes walking on campus because the kids there tend to miss their own dogs back at home, and he likes causing a little happiness in his daily routine. Switched schools this year, so I haven't seen them. I miss you, Bella.
People that repost those cringy,
"I'm not a B-word, I'm just honest, wink,"
posts multiple times a day to Facebook while reaffirming the post in the text comment above, saying how much the post is,
"Yep, oh, it's so me."
Cringe.
My eyes change color in the sunlight.
Also,
my eyes change color with the seasons.
Wow, who knew different types of lighting based on the weather could affect what color things are seen as? I hate to be mean, but there was this girl in a couple of my classes in college who told the professors that she wanted to be called Oracle instead of her real name. You could see the cringe in the professor's eyes and feel the awkward tension all over.
About once every quarter, this happens to me. I'm not like everybody else.
Followed directly by being exactly like everyone else. It's 2005 Hot Topic all over again. I adopted an RP accent in high school. I already had a bit of a posh voice from going to elocution lessons, but I went full 19th century British aristocrat sometimes. I went to school in regional Australia too. Also, I bought a pocket watch to look posh. I do actually like pocket watches, but I knew why I did it. Girls who say they only hang out with boys because it's less drama. Read, "No one puts up with my crap anymore and I don't play well with others." The scene. German class. The teacher was someone who escaped the DDR, East Germany, when she was young. The actor, an obese guy with a neckbeard, skinny jeans, and pink shoes who said, "Oh, you're from East Germany? I'm a communist too." I'm so glad he dropped the class. The dysfunctional veteran gear. I hate that crap so much, typically worn by a guy that maybe got through basic before they were separated or kicked out for underage drinking. I'll see guys in my classes wearing it, always talking about crap that has nothing to do with the class I'm taking. Meanwhile, I'm just thinking, I get it, dude, now shut the frick up and let the professor get back to the lesson plan. I know someone that is a habitual funeral goer. Anytime someone remotely affiliated with them passes, especially in the town we live in, they are all over social media proclaiming how devastated they are and how close they were to the person. More annoying is repeating the same story over and over about their one interaction with them, or whatever. Like tries to get super close with the family at the time and then trails off after the hype from the death is over. People who wear cute but psycho shirts. At least it's one way to know who to avoid, I guess. I was talking to a classmate on the bus and she hauled out her sketchbook to show me her original character, which was a bear that vomits corpses. She related all of this to me in a very loud and carrying voice. Tim, who in 2007 dressed like he was hosting a Nickelodeon game show in 1994, was always around. He thought it was shtick, but he would flip your words around on you. The Yankees are your team, huh? What do you own the Yankees? Did not stop. Finally, someone asked if he was 7 years old and knew how to talk like an adult. Tim then disappeared faster than Drax at the end of Infinity War. 12 years, and I haven't seen him since. Bumper stickers. Lots and lots of bumper stickers. If I see more than 2 to 3 on a car, like, okay, you support a political candidate and love your Doberman, cool, I just assume the person driving it is insufferable. If they're that insistent on sharing their opinions in public to strangers, imagine how they are privately. I once saw a car with so many bumper stickers it covered the entire trunk and back window. Not sure how that's not illegal, but either way, I was embarrassed for them. I went to college with a girl whose car, front, hood, sides, roof and back were all bumper stickers. There were so many you almost couldn't tell the car was silver. There were like 13 different versions of this coexist sticker, then a ton for Planned Parenthood, lots of anti-Trump stuff, lots of Black Lives Matter stickers, Pride stickers, etc. Which, hey, cool if you support or don't support stuff. But fricking hell, she was the worst. Just at everything. She was insufferable. If you didn't agree with every single thing she did or said, it was a personal attack on her, and she had to tell everyone you were a right-wing extremist, or a stalker, or a misogynist, etc. She mooched homework answers from everyone, and if you wouldn't help her, suddenly you victimized her somehow. She couldn't hold a single conversation without making it political or announcing she was a vegan, or she hated X, Y, or Z. She was the most annoying person I've ever met. Sometimes I see that car in town and I just cringe. I knew a girl who wanted to be a manic pixie dream girl type. After some exposure to her, I realized that meant she was flaky, had erratic behavior, and displayed some traits that implied she was mentally ill. I'm so happy she's out of my life. When people say they only listen to The Greatest Showman, or that the only type of music they like is The Greatest Showman. 1, that's not something to brag about, and 2, that doesn't make you special. A lot of people like that movie. Everyone who has now started using One Life to Live or this, #OL2L, as their new YOLO life motto. Divorce your husband? OL2L. Fricked the hot Brazilian dude at work who's engaged? OL2L. Going to take a crap? OL2L. Put a pic of the coffee you're drinking in a very hipster area on Instagram? #OL2L. Don't use a hashtag or weird life motto to be a different kind of butthole. You'll always be a butthole. My ex was a one-upper and always had to play the devil's advocate or bring attention to himself. He was a self-proclaimed anarchist. He carried several knives on him and only drank coffee. Claimed smoking helped his ADHD. Invalidated everything I said when I just needed to vent about something. Always making fun of people, rudely in public, and yelled at me for being embarrassed. Refused to get a job because he didn't want to work for the man. Was absolutely convinced the FBI would break into our house and haul us off to camps. What he won't tell you, I worked in a crappy retail job to pay for our rent. I did the grocery shopping and cooking, he used food stamps, and he used all of his school money on bug-out bag gear. Oh, and the real reason he didn't drive was because his license was suspended. Not because he didn't want to drive. 24-year-old me was a fricking idiot. What's the worst experience you've had with a toilet? Not me, but a friend of mine. A group of us all decided to go on a camping trip with our respective significant others. His girlfriend tells him she will not go unless they have a toilet, so he goes out and buys a portable, chemical toilet. He also buys a new tent for them to use and retire the old tent to be the bathroom. He sets the toilet up in town on the valley floor, fills up the fill tank with the blue chemical fluid. He tests it to make sure it works properly. The operation is simple. You pull a lever which opens a flap in the bottom of the toilet. The evidence is dropped through the flap, and a second valve drops fluid down the sides of the toilet into the open flap, flushing all remaining evidence into the lower tank. The flap then returns to its original position, creating a nice, airtight seal, preventing the contents of lower tank from disturbing your precious sensibilities. We drove all the way up to the top of the mountain and set up camp. We have a fun day of eating camp food, drinking beer, and having fun. It's now probably close to midnight and pitch black. My friend is the first one to need to use the new bathroom with the new 20th century chemical toilet. He excuses himself and proceeds to thoroughly test the storage capacity of the upper bowl. He pushes the lever to open the flap to the lower sealed tank, and immediately he gets a lesson on air pressure displacement, as the 7,000 or so feet higher elevation has resulted in a much higher pressure inside the waste tank than the air outside. There also appears to be a slurry of liquid and solid waste between escaping air and victim. What we hear around the campfire is a loud thwomp, followed by the friends screaming, "Oh God! Oh God! Oh crap! No!" Of course, being the good friends we are, we rush to his aid with him yelling, "Don't come in here! Don't come in here!" Many wet naps were used that night, a midnight creek river bath, and years of teasing came from that night. That was the last camping trip for that tent. It was retired. The toilet, however, still is used, but the reason for the little screw valve on the side was learned by all. In conclusion, pressure difference in camping toilet became crap fountain. I wonder if, on deliberation, his partner would have just preferred crapping in the woods like the other campers do. I've never used one of these devices, and now I'm not sure I ever would. Was at Target one day, shopping for groceries and whatnot. I then got that feeling, you know, when you've got to take a dump. I rushed to the nearest bathroom and unleashed the beast. Mind you, this Target only had one bathroom, and it was a bathroom where only one person could be there at a time. I thought it would be a quick crap, but it turned out I was wrong, and it would not stop coming out. This goes on for about 10 to 15 minutes, and then I hear knocking on the door. It was a lady that said, "My son really has to use the bathroom. Would you please hurry up?" I couldn't really respond to her because of all the pain I was feeling, so I basically moaned and grunted at her. After about 3 minutes, I hear a kid screaming, "Mommy!" and I could probably tell it was the mother's son. Hearing this, I knew I needed to hurry up, so I forced myself to squeeze out the extremities faster. As soon as it's done, I whip fast as possible. The worst part is that when I tried to flush the toilet, it clogged. So about 3/4 of the toilet bowl is filled with crap, pee, and toilet paper. Scared, I wash my hands and make a run for the door, then to my car. When I exit the bathroom, I notice a little boy crying and his mum saying things like, "Frick, damn, crap," etc. Turns out the kid crapped himself because I was taking such a long time. It was awkward when I was walking back to my car since the woman's car was right next to mine and she was carrying him to the car so the kid could go home and change. In conclusion, made a kid crap himself after taking a humongous crap myself. Here you go, my worst toilet experience. I have issues. I'm painfully shy, very nervous of things a lot of the time, and I get highly anxious about some things, particularly going to the loo. I find it really awkward to go to the bathroom in an unfamiliar house, even more so with unfamiliar people. When I was at university, I was the only girl living in a house with a group of boys. I was quite nervous about crapping. I mean, males tend to have a kind of idea of females that they don't do crap or something, and that they think that when they do, it's pink and pebble-like. Anyhow, one evening I went to the toilet, didn't put the light on, and the pull cord for the light was outside the bathroom. So I made the decision on my way that I wouldn't use the light. It was early evening in autumn, so it was light-ish. I could see, but it was dim and shadowy. I only had to pee, so it wasn't a huge problem. Only it was a problem because then I ended up pooing. I was supposed to be going food shopping with one of my housemates, and here I was pooing. I was getting a little anxious that he was waiting downstairs, and the time I was taking would be a firm indicator that I was more than peeing. I quickly finished up and was about to leave the bathroom when I thought to myself that I should maybe double-check the toilet was clean before I left. Having no light meant it was very hard to see if there were any stains. I used my phone to light up the toilet and saw the biggest poo ever. Seriously, it was taking up half the toilet and was wedged into the U-bend. I panicked. I flushed, but it didn't move. Didn't budge. Now I was getting really flustered. Downstairs, housemates would have definitely heard a double flush. It still hadn't gone. I couldn't risk a third flush. A third flush would be far more humiliating than dealing with it using an alternate method. At least I thought so. Not sure how I convinced myself of that, but in blind panic and toilet embarrassment, I did. I convinced myself that I had no other option but to lift it out. I did not tell myself to wrap my hand in toilet paper. In went the hand. I got a firm grip on the log and Sue learned that there is no gripping a poo. It can't be done. It began to disintegrate in my hand. But I managed to sort of flip it into the sink where it landed in 2 chunks with a wet thud slap and left opaque brown stains all over the sink. Here I will add that I definitely should have just broken it up and flushed it, but I was panicking so bad. I could feel my heart pumping and I was sweating and my breathing was stalling. My whole body was shaking and felt like jelly. It was like a negative adrenaline. So what do you do when you have a sink covered in crap stains and 2 huge chunks of crap sat there waiting to be disposed of? You mash it down the sink. You run the tap until the water is scalding hot and you proceed to mash the poo into the plug hole as it disintegrates. Only it blocks the plug hole. Now the sink is filling up, and you have a crap plug in the bottom of the sink of burning water, and you have to unblock it. So you shove your hand in, burning yourself while you're trying like crazy to scoop the crap out of the little plug holes. All the while, you hear your housemate shouting up the stairs, "Hey, Susie, are you okay? Are you ready to go?" Oh crap. Literally. Suddenly, the panic reaches a new level. The housemate is coming up the stairs, the door to your crap sauna is at the top of those very stairs, and you know that the steam in this room is the most foul-smelling steam that could ever be, and soon it will have leaked under the door to the top of the stairs he's walking up. You grab bleach, soap, shampoo, shower gel, and start squirting it under the hot tap, trying like hell to make normal-smelling steam. I'm in the shower. I thought I'd need a shower. It might save time. What the frick was that excuse? Anyhow, the steam is now pooey and perfumed and sickening. The poo is almost mashed away, but the last few bits are not leaving. If you've never manhandled crap, it has a texture like no other. It feels a bit like when you start kneading bread just after adding the warm water and it's warm and sticky. Maybe it's seeded bread. There's definitely a slight coarseness to crap. Mainly, it's the stickiness that is a hassle. And the smell. Obviously, it sticks like melted chocolate and dough combined into a sticky, thick nightmare. You force the last few nuggets down the sink and start trying to wash your hands. The smell will not leave. Will not budge. After 10 minutes of scrubbing and soaping and crying and sitting because your legs will no longer support you, you decide to do the walk of shame. Exit the bathroom, tell your housemate that you were sick in the shower and it took some cleaning up. Remember suddenly, thanks to Beethoven, that tomato juice gets rid of skunk smell and wonder if it will get rid of poo smell. Set off to the supermarket in new hope of getting rid of the smell. The biggest oh crap came in the toilet roll aisle when my housemate says, "Oh, this reminds me, I did the biggest crap ever earlier. It wouldn't flush, I just had to leave it." It wasn't even my own crap. I'd known this guy for 3 weeks and had already gotten up to my elbows in his crap, all because it felt weird pooing in an unfamiliar environment.
That flatmate's gonna try and take a dump at least 3 times before he leaves the house from now on.
Yep, this incident will scar her for life. He will constantly go to the bathroom before he does anything, really.
Holy crap, I must have been that kid.
I thought this would be a funny topic to do, and it very much is. However, it's also making me pause to gag intermittently. So a mixed bag in summary. A mixed bag of poo, pee, and my spew. Here's another one. I was pooping in a train toilet. I thought it was locked. My country's train toilets use electronical locks. You push a button and it's supposed to be locked. But it wasn't. Some young good-looking lady walked right in. I was confused and didn't know what to say. 1, because I was crapping, and 2, because she was a fine-looking woman. So what came from my mouth joyfully was, "Tickets, please!" And then the door closed automatically. I have Hirschsprung's disease, which basically means I was born without the muscles that move poop through the intestines. Basically, when I have to poop, there's no holding it in for a while. I have maybe 5 minutes before I crap myself. So I have many, many poop stories. My favorite happened when I was about 10. I went over to a friend's house, whose mother was a teacher at the school we went to, for the night. Since she's a girl and I'm a boy, we couldn't sleep in the same room, so I had to sleep in her older brother's room, who was about 16. Right before it was time for bed, my friend's mum said not to use the bathroom in the brother's room. I definitely didn't hear this, Probably because we were playing Legos or something. Anyway, about 2 a.m. I feel the need and rush to the closest bathroom, her brother's bathroom. I left the beefiest, runny crap I have ever crapped in that poor, poor toilet. There's 3 funny parts to this story. First, there was no water in the bowl. Crap, there was no water in the whole bathroom. Second, everyone knew not to use that bathroom, the door was always shut, so the smell slipped under the nasal radar for like 3 days, and the contents of the bowl hardened into poop steel. Lastly, her mum asked me at school if I knew anything about them needing to replace a certain toilet in a certain forbidden bathroom. That's amazing. I worked in a display suite for new apartments. The toilets were always dry. One Saturday morning, we opened up the display to the most foul stench I've ever smelled. It was the middle of summer, and the display suite was all glass with a tin roof so it heated up like a sauna. Trying to find the source of the smell, we realized that someone had crapped in the display toilet last weekend, despite there being no toilet paper or water in the toilet, and being too embarrassed or inconsiderate to tell anybody. So for a week in the middle of Australian summer, this turd sat there festering. It was rancid. The worst part was, because it was in a working environment, it was a biohazard. The company I worked for was too cheap to professionally deal with the issue, so the cleaners tried to vacuum it out, blowing hot poo air out the back of the vacuum, only making the smell worse. It took weeks to get out, and now we seal the toilets shut. Typically, I won't drop a deuce anywhere but my own house, but one time I was at my new girlfriend's house and the situation was dire. I was getting sweaty fighting it. My stomach was making the sound that there were radioactive gases brewing, and I knew I didn't have time to get all the way home. So instead, thinking that I have the bowels of a normal person, I went to the bathroom and destroyed that toilet. Even with the fan on, I'm positive she heard it as if I recorded it for her on my phone. Finally, it was over. I flush and it clogs. I spent a total of 45 minutes in there between the act and the post-war toilet maintenance, and lost any smooth points I had with her for the next several months. In conclusion, pooped in my girlfriend's house and went from knight in shining armor to the poopsmith in 45 minutes. So, what happened with you guys? I reckon it all went down the toilet from there. One time when I was little, I wanted to know what it would be like to be blind, so I blindfolded myself. When it was time to pee, I couldn't see the toilet and accidentally peed on the lid and started crying. Not sure if it was my worst or my best. I was peeing when a big sneeze hit me, which made me fart, which for some reason was followed immediately by a burp, which made me snort in laughter, which gave me the hiccups. You deserve an award for that. Is that what number 3 is? Burp snort. I once farted at the exact same time someone texted me. My phone was in my front pocket and set to vibrate. For a split second, I thought I'd farted so hard it was coming out front and back. I was walking into a stall in a subway, as in the underground transportation system, when I slipped in a puddle of pee and stuck my right arm into a pile of unflushed crap in the toilet in front of me, soaking my knees in pee, covering my hand above the wrist in the worst case of the runs I've ever seen, and badly spraining a couple of fingers when they caught on the edge of the toilet when I was catching myself. Then I spewed. I was at my girlfriend's house for the second time and things were still rather tense. I got a terrible stomachache during dinner and had to use the bathroom immediately. The layout of their house was in a way that the bathroom was next to the dining room. Not wanting to make much embarrassing noise, I wisely created a nest of toilet paper on the ground to later transfer the poo into the toilet. Squatting down, I began crapping, lost my balance, fell, hit my head on the counter and fell unconscious. I was found in a mess of crap when I came to. I feel like this is an unfinished story. What happened when you came to? Not only will this technique prevent splashback, but it will muffle the sound. For our viewers' convenience, the narrator has followed the link provided by that previous commenter. The technique is apparently laying a single piece of toilet paper on the surface of the water, which does wonders for preventing splash and, by extension, UTIs. Academic hall bathroom, senior year of college. Went to take a crap during class. Did not look at the roll beforehand. Go to wipe, no paper. By myself in the bathroom, so I do that sort of haven't wiped my butt crab walk to check out the other stall. No toilet paper in there either. Go to the paper towel dispenser. No paper. Ended up using a handful of gum wrappers I had in my pocket to get enough to walk downstairs to the other bathroom and finish the job. I still have nightmares. Okay, so when I was in the first grade, I went to this hardcore Christian school in Florida, USA. So one day, my class went on a field trip to the library or something along those lines. I just remember them leaving the classroom for about half an hour or so. Anyway, I wasn't allowed to come because the week before I had tied my shoes together in the library, so I got kicked out. So here I am, first grader, alone in the classroom when I feel grumbly in my tumbly. I figure that I have to wait until my teacher gets back before I'm allowed to go to the bathroom. So I patiently wait as the poop pains get more and more intense. Eventually, I am in the corner curled into a ball squeezing my butt cheeks with the force of 1,000 gods. I hear my teacher from down the hall, and as I jump into the air with relief, I crap myself. I straight up crap myself as my entire class enters the classroom. So then, first grader me tries to play it off like nothing's going on, and I sit in my seat and proceed to learn. I'm an idiot. I'd freaking crapped myself. The teacher pulls me out and tells me that the entire class can smell my crap-filled drawers and sends me to the nurse's office while I'm forced to sit on a toilet until my parents can come. I ended up sitting on that toilet with crap covering my legs and crying for about 2 hours. When my parents finally arrived, I had hives covering my legs from that god-forsaken toilet. In conclusion, crapped myself in the first grade, had to sit on the toilet for 2+ hours with crap covering legs, and breaking out in hives. In an Indian restaurant, I went for a pee, and while I was sitting there, I noticed that a few of the tiles were blown, as in they'd come away from the wall. So in my slightly drunken state, I thought, I'll give them a prod. So I did. At that point, a vast quantity of tiles fell off the wall, causing a very loud crash. Everyone in the restaurant heard it. I had to walk back to my table with everyone, including the servers, looking at me. I never went back. When I was in high school, somebody in my family forgot to flush after going number 2. At some point, my dog discovered this and proceeded to treat herself to a snack. I went upstairs after I caught a hint of a very foul smell to find the contents of the toilet dragged across the hallway carpet. My mum and I spent the rest of the night cleaning it. The worst part was how sick my dog got. She spent the next few days vomiting up foamy, brown spew that reeked like you wouldn't believe. Mine would probably be having a violent period the morning after a night out whilst staying with my then-girlfriend in her dorm room, conducted in her ensuite bathroom with little to no sound insulation. I'd snuck out of bed around 6 a.m., praying to every available deity to leave her peacefully sleeping while I experienced my furious bowel vacation. Regrettably, this was not to be. As soon as I sat on the unfortunate porcelain throne, I unleashed a torrent of gas and liquid not usually experienced outside of volcanic eruptions. This was the pyroclastic flow of crapping. The noise was inescapable, and any attempt to control it just resulted in greater volume, except furnished with an embarrassingly puckered nuance. After the storm, I carefully opened the door, once again silently praying that my girlfriend would be clearly asleep, blissfully oblivious to the tarnation I'd just inflicted to her bathroom. Instead, I saw her shaking with laughter under the covers. Possibly not the worst experience one can have with a toilet, as Elvis would no doubt attest, but it was extremely embarrassing. I was on holiday in Florida with my girlfriend, now ex, and her family. Went to the toilet in the hotel room when we got there. Crap was too big to go down the crappy American toilet. Blocked and then proceeded to overflow after I attempted a double flush. Janitor was called, and the look he gave me when he left the bathroom was akin to a Vietnam flashback. In addition to this, the water leaked downstairs into the lobby. In conclusion, took a crap, blocked a toilet, traumatized a janitor, and flooded the lobby. American toilet? In case you didn't realize, Americans are done with taking Europe's crap. One of my good friends earned the nickname Iceberg by doing just this. Be proud of that crap. Clogging someone else's toilet is almost a rite of passage. It's like being a dog who pees on a fire hydrant to claim their territory. It's your toilet, your grounds now. The best part? You clog up the toilet, they fix it for you. First step in dominating your friends and becoming the alpha. When I was about 8, I accidentally zipped the outer skin of my pee-pee up in my zipper. My mum had to come and unzip me, which was not awesome. Things got pretty mangled up, so we're driving to the hospital, and my mum is yelling at my dad, "I told you we should have circumcised him." My dad is yelling at me for being such an idiot, and I'm just bawling my eyes out in the back seat. Good times. Ended up having to get circumcised because the doctor was worried that it would heal up with scar tissue that would cause problems down the line. On the plus side, I got a week off school. At my then-girlfriend's house, and I've got to pee. Excuse myself to take a leak, and I find myself fighting 2 streams. My pee hole was semi-blocked from my self-pleasure activities conducted a few hours previous. Is there a name for this? Typically, the blockage is only temporary, but on this occasion the two-streamed dragon did not waver. One stream hit the water as the second sprayed the seat, wall, and floor. In hindsight, I should have remedied the trouble by simply squatting lower. In my panic, I used the only available tool I had, my hand, to bank Stream 2 back into the bowl. I spent the next 10 minutes cleaning a good amount of pee off the floor and walls. Definitely the time I got locked inside a bathroom stall in the middle of Moscow. I closed and locked the stall door behind me and commenced my business. A lot of vodka the night before was doing a number on me, and I thought about my girlfriend sitting outside wondering what was going on. A few minutes passed, and when I tried to exit, I immediately saw the latch was broken. Completely broken. It wouldn't engage at all. That's when I noticed the claw marks around it. It was half broken and there were pry marks too. Clearly, I was not this toilet's first victim. I panicked and started banging really hard. This was one of those stalls that goes all the way to the floor, so I wasn't crawling out. After a few minutes, I was wedging myself against the back wall and trying to kick it out. I was in full-blown panic mode now. Stuck in a foreign country, I speak a little Russian, but my teacher never taught me, "Help me, I'm stuck in the toilet." The Russian word for help is all I could muster up. After 10 minutes, I began to lose hope. This was deep inside the mall and there was no cell signal on my mobile, so I couldn't even embarrassingly text my girlfriend. After sitting back down and collecting myself, I decided to try and crawl out of the 6-inch space at the top. I shoved my huge winter coat and all my shopping bags one by one over the top of the stall. Then I began to try and scale the wall tile. These were high ceilings. I fell a few times and I heard a lot of Russian men murmuring. I figured all my purchases would be gone. Eventually I squeezed over the top and fell 8 feet down on my butt to a lot of stairs. Then I had to explain why I was in the bathroom for 30 minutes. She didn't even believe me when I told her this story. People who hired a personal investigator. What did you uncover? My mum was an attorney who worked in the workers' compensation insurance. Her colleagues were representing a woman who had been gravely injured on the job and deemed totally unable to work. The opposing attorney hired a PI to investigate this woman. Let's call her Jane. They get to court and present the video footage as their platinum evidence, proving that this woman was totally able to work. Here is Jane mowing her lawn. Here she is unloading her groceries from her car. Here she is walking the dog. Here she is going for a run, etc., etc. Jane's attorneys sat there totally quiet. When it was their turn to cross-examine the PI, they declined any questions. Their turn was up next. Who is the first witness for the opposing side? We would like to call Jane's identical twin sister to the stand. Jane's identical twin had moved in with her bedridden sister after the work accident. Full benefits awarded to Jane. Apparently the look on the faces of the opposing attorneys was the stuff lawyers' dreams are made of. My grandfather once hired a PI. See, he has a large vineyard as well as a few engineering projects he's working on. Well, 2 guys pressed charges on him because they claimed they'd hurt their backs working for him, and he needed to pay for all the medical bills, disability, etc. He thought it was a little fishy and hired a PI. The PI uncovered that they had not actually been hurt and documented the 2 people working at a lumber yard, which has a lot more physical labor than a vineyard. It cost my grandfather a bit to hire him, but way less than what he would have had to pay those 2 scammers. I think this is probably the most common thing a PI does. Probably number 2 on the list, number 1 being catching cheating spouses. There probably is no number 3. I worked as a PI for a couple of years, and it's really not the case. It costs a heck of a lot of money to hire a PA, and just isn't really worth it when all you have to do is catch your spouse tripping up with an undeleted email or a Facebook message. The whole PI to catch a cheating spouse thing is just something you see on TV and movies a lot. That isn't to say it never happens, it's just not the most common thing. It's almost always disability claims or some other legal matters. If you think about it, it really makes sense. When you're threatened with having to pay a crap load of disability money to someone, you have a lot more to lose, and chances are you're a little more able to afford a PI than some stay-at-home wife whose husband works late a little too often. Well, Mr. Former PI, that may be true in the majority of cases, but I will say that in this group of stories it seems like some people have been crazy paranoid enough to hire PIs to spy on their spouses. Starting with the following. My wife hired one. She found that she was wasting money and that I'm a very boring person. We came from different cultures, but we knew we wanted to be with each other. She's Hispanic, born in another country, and I'm a hillbilly from Appalachia. There was a lot of jealousy early on, both sides, because we simply couldn't relate. After a while, I grew tired of being suspicious and told her that if she wanted to be with someone else, to just tell me and I'll move on. But to just tell me. It was very freeing for me. I guess to her, though, it only made her more suspicious. I got off work at 7 a.m. and there wasn't much to do, and not many places that were open for a couple more hours, so I would go to the gym. And I guess she didn't like not being able to account for the gap between me leaving work and me coming back to the apartment. The guy she hired to follow me around was terrible. I had my routine: get off work, go to the gym, go grab some breakfast, hit up Blockbuster, maybe go to a pet store. We had birds and fish. At the time in the morning, these places are empty. Like I said, I'm a boring person. Cut to a few days later, I leave the gym and the new guy behind, head to a restaurant, and in comes the new guy from the gym. Creepy. I eat, then leave, go to Blockbuster, and in he comes. So here I am suspicious. The next day at the gym, I'm telling my buddy about how creepy it was that the new guy shows up everywhere I go, and he agrees. I'm done working out and tell my buddy that I'm going to leave and that I'm going to a specific pet store, and if the guy leaves the gym right after me, that my buddy should head to the same pet store. And that was what happened. I go to the store, a couple of minutes later, in walks the guy, and a minute after that, in comes my buddy. We ended up pinning the guy to the floor. I asked why, and he starts saying, "It's just a job," and that he ain't seen nothing. We release him back into the wild with the order that he's not to show up at the gym again. I get home, call her up, and say that she hired the biggest idiot around and that she needs to stop wasting money. She asks, "What happened?" I tell her to ask him since she gave him money. Her jealousy died down after that. Well, that, and I made the ultimate quote to her that made sense. I said, "If I was getting laid as much as you think I am, wouldn't I be a lot happier?" And that was that. For those folks hoping for a different ending, sorry to disappoint. We've been together for almost a quarter of a century and everything is fine. Maybe she just couldn't believe that she was involved with someone so boring. If a PI followed me around, goes to work 5 minutes late every day, comes home from work at the same time every day, stays at home until work the next day, stays at home all day on the weekends. I just hope he doesn't reveal what kind of adult content I watch. This pretty much sums up my life. In between work, they would see me take a whole bunch of green herb and watch It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia for hours. If my significant other hired a PI on me, I'd be fricking livid. Livid's a strange name for a mistress. I worked as a PI one summer for a friend of my dad's. Busted 3 people faking disability claims. Oh man, was that some really boring work. Previous PI here, work is boring, but when it's exciting, it's very exciting. I found out that PIs are pretty damn expensive. My dad's friend is a PI. He charges $45 to $65 an hour, and also charges for whatever gas or transportation fees he incurs while working. He's pretty well off too. Apparently a lot of people need the service, which surprises me. Lots of PIs are contracted out through various police departments as well, and law firms to disprove or limit damages claims in personal injury cases. My mother hired one to follow my father, who's a 6th grade teacher. So he was cheating on my mum with a former student of his who was 14 years old, and my father was 36 at the time. Was jail involved soon after? No, the parents of the girl didn't press any charges, as they were pretty okay with it. In fact, he married her soon after. A relative of a friend of mine approached me one day and asked if I could help in finding his brother on the internet somehow. His brother had up and left town with no indication of where he was going, leaving a wife and 2 small children behind. They were not separated and still lived with the kids. He took little more than the clothes on his back. They didn't know if he was in trouble, running from someone, or just a deadbeat. They bought me his passworded desktop PC, which was an XP machine and easily cracked. There wasn't anything in the browser history, the documents folders had nothing, and the machine was relatively blank. I did find a World of Warcraft installation though, and inside that was everything I needed. In the game's screenshots folder, I found several shots of his dwarf talking to a female night elf, very cutesy-like, including some chat lines about being together, and flirty emotes. It was clear what he had done. This turbo nerd had left his family for a night elf. In the screenshots, I could see a few add-ons. One particular World of Warcraft add-on, Pratt, that he had installed has a scrollback chat buffer it saves. I was able to locate the settings file containing that buffer, and in it was his last conversation with her before leaving, including an actual address, 800 miles away. Google provided a name, phone number, and satellite photo of her house and car. They were blown away when I gave them his pinpoint location. He called the number right there on his cell phone and asked for him, and sure enough, he was there, probably shocked to crap to get a call from his brother after this disappearing act. As far as I know, he didn't return home, but I'm sure my little detective work made sure the kids got their child support. In conclusion, Turbo Nerd Dwarf Hunter becomes the hunted. Okay, 2 stories of PIs being used to discover scumbags in a row. That makes a nice break from all the cases of personal injury claims. What crappy dads. I hope they got drained for everything they were worth in child support. My uncle hired one to follow his wife after she gave some signs of an affair. She was the principal of a school and claimed she had to work long hours or would attend every single school event and function and would be gone long hours or go on business trips, among other things. Turns out she was totally having relations with the vice principal. He got camera footage of them going to her house during lunch breaks for a quickie on my uncle's bed. He got other footage as well of them meeting up numerous times. It was never confirmed, but some kids at the school later claimed she and the VP had done it in their office. After it all came to light, it dawned on all the other aunts and uncles the many times my aunt would drop off her daughter at random times and random nights at our houses because she had a spontaneous school function and needed a babysitter. It was also mysterious when she surprised my uncle with chest augmentation surgery, which turns out was for the other guy. How does one surprise their spouse with elective surgery? Do they just roll over in bed and say, "Look what the melon fairy left, honey"? In 2005, my mother had suspicions that my father was cheating on her whenever he would go to the Dominican Republic. So she hired an investigator in DR who began to watch my father. The PI express mailed her some pictures of my father and some young woman kissing, dancing, going into hotel rooms, the works. She later found out that the woman was the mother of my father's illegitimate daughter, my half-sister. My father got her a visa and she is living with us now in the States. I was trying to locate a former business account who had failed to return some of my property. PI quickly determined she used several different names, several different birth dates, sometimes claiming to be a senior citizen, and had used 20 different addresses in the previous few years, all over the country. PI was as baffled as I was, said she was either a con artist or mentally ill, or both. Anyways, too bad for her, her new employer had issued a press release about her hiring. Rather than contacting her, I'd already tried that, I'd exchanged some emails with her without results, I contacted her new boss. UPS man delivered my property to my door 2 days later. My mum is a divorce attorney, and she has one she recommends to her clients when necessary. It's all about hiding money. I've talked to the guy and basically he does a lot of online research and looking at money statements and stuff. Sounds actually really boring. I have not hired one, but my now father-in-law hired one when I first started dating his daughter. Funny part is, I was working in the port, with ships, when I stopped at the guard shack and told them that I was being followed by some strange person. The PI pulled up next and had 3 port police officers pull guns on him and tell him to get out of the car. I think he ended up going to jail. Laughed my butt off, but I did sort of feel bad. I would have called the dad up and offered him anything he wanted to know, at only half the cost. My uncle was a PI for a while. He mostly worked for insurance groups and lawyers to make sure the correct person was being served or prosecuted. He would have to figure out stuff like who burned the farm down, John Smith Jr. or John Smith Sr. Was Jane Doe the divorcee or the third wife? One time, this kid wrecked his Ferrari. Kid ended up posting his version of the wreck on MySpace. He told how he'd intentionally wrecked it because his parents didn't get him the Ferrari he wanted. It was very Tom Haverford from Parks and Rec. My mum is a PI. She's asked me to go into bars and adult clubs with her on multiple occasions to observe individuals. Both made sense to remain inconspicuous as well as her own safety. Let me just say, you've never really been to an adult club until you go with your mum. She was trashing girls left and right out of earshot. About 10 years ago, my cousin was deployed in Afghanistan on his second tour. During phone calls back home, his daughter made mention of a new uncle he didn't know existed. My aunt decided to hire a PI for him and found out his wife was cheating with a doctor. Of course, he was heartbroken. The divorce that followed was quick. However, there is a bright side to this. After switching to a reserve unit, he was able to finish college and go to law school. His ex-wife? She was dumped by the doctor not long after the divorce. She attempted to reconcile, but my cousin refused. He's remarried. She lives with a group of friends in some run-down house. When I was 10, my parents separated and went through a nasty divorce. Sometime during all of that, he hired a PI to follow my mum around. The PI concluded that my mother was a working girl. She did escort service and hung around the doctor's conventions. The PI took photos and logged everything. My dad snuck into the house my mother and I lived in with a camcorder and recorded the discovery of a ledger containing all of her clients and the money exchange. He leveraged it in the divorce so he didn't get bent over entirely. My dad didn't tell me any of this until I was 17 or so. I didn't believe it until I thought back and remembered some things. She had a pager, and back in the 90s only a few types of people had pagers: doctors and working girls. She would suddenly be gone late at night if I woke up. She would always say she was out grocery shopping. I also remember walking in on her wearing a revealing dress made of leather. No more revealing than what girls wear to the club, but hey, that crap is weird when it's your mum and you're 10. Anywho, my dad still throws it at me when he wants to prove how much better of a person he is than my mother or my stepdad, who married a working girl. In her defense, she was paying her way to become an RN, which she is now. In conclusion, PI followed my mum for my dad during a nasty divorce. Found out she was a working girl. Dad holds grudge to this day and tells his kids about it. And another piece of evidence that many spouses apparently hire PIs to discover cheating spouses. Okay, so I'll bite. Nothing like hunting down a psycho ex or anything like that, but it's interesting enough. So I was living in England and had an uncle living in assisted living in California. He was 95 at the time, a little fuzzy about some things, but on the whole, sharp as a tack. He was deeply religious and attended church weekly. A couple of women from the church had made friends with him, drove him to church, bought him trinkets and whatnot, and basically took care of him, sort of. Sounded okay to me. Heck, I was in England, what was I going to do? The only thing that jarred me a little bit was one time when I was talking to the woman on the phone, one of them told me that my uncle had signed over power of attorney to them. That struck me as a little odd. My uncle and I weren't really close, but being his heir, along with my brother, wouldn't he have told me about it? I shrugged it off, though. Again, what was I going to do? I was 6,000 miles away. Besides, and this is what gets a lot of people, he was of sound mind. He was a free agent, so it was really none of my fricking business. A year or two go by, I check on him periodically and everything seems fine. I come home one night and my phone is ringing. It's the assisted care residence. Crap, what's happened? Is he dead? He's 97 fricking years old. I was expecting it any day. No, it's these two little old ladies. They're trying to get my uncle to sign over power of attorney to them. Wait a minute, hadn't he already done that? The alarm bells go off. Something is deeply wrong and it was going to make at least 24 hours to get back to California, given connections, flights, renting a car, blah blah blah. So I call a PI from England, tell him the situation, and as soon as I can get to the part about the women, he stops me and says, "Wait, let me tell you how this story goes." He then proceeds to tell me that this is a common scam. These women cruise the churches looking for these little old guys who on the surface have no family to speak of and healthy retirement and investment accounts. So I get my butt back to California ASAP, and unfortunately my uncle has signed nothing. Although at this point they're pushing him hard. They'd even kidnapped him and taken him to an attorney and tried to get him to sign over POA to them. Little did they know who they were dealing with. My dad's side of the family sets the gold standard for stubbornness. I learned this early on when my dad said no, that was it, give it up, because that was an answer that was not going to change. My uncle, all 100 pounds and 97 years of him, had dug in his heels. So we signed over POA to me and now the hunt begins. Where were his accounts? These women handed over nothing to me, a few receipts but no accounts, nothing. So this PI and I ended up hanging out for a few days tracking everything down. I can't begin to tell you how much I learned from this man, a complete original. Vietnam vet, former Navy SEAL, carried a knife in his boot and a gun in his shoulder holster. So he shows me it's mostly research, and that I resonate to since I work in research. Painstaking, boring, turning over one pebble at a time kind of investigation. Knowing how to talk to people, how to observe. It requires a massive amount of patience. We went to every bank within 20 miles, and by schmoozing and showing my POA, we found what we thought was every account. I then went over everything. They had played a shell game, borrowing from him, hadn't quite stolen from him, but it took quite a while to figure out what they'd done. Then I find the pièce de résistance. They had him sign over all of his retirement accounts to them, or more specifically to the younger one being a spry 81 years old. So we do some further investigation. Turns out this one is broke. Looks like she sent it back to the Philippines or something. She spent a lot of time in Vegas. So here's how it shakes out, a common scam. These two little Jezebels made a play for my uncle, who fell for the younger one, hook, line and sinker. They get him to sign over all of his retirement accounts to them, and then all they have to do is outlive him. At 81 and 83, respectively, with my uncle 96, it should be easy. So I confront them, told them that I knew what they were doing and I had the evidence. I didn't really, I only strongly suspected, and that I could turn them in. So they spilled the beans, told me what they'd done. They swore that they had only borrowed the money. We signed it all back over, I didn't turn them in, I figured it would all come out in the wash anyway. I didn't want to see them go to jail, and I wasn't sure I could prove it anyway. But if it wasn't for this PI who had my back, they would have gotten away with it. I'm a firm believer now, I learned a crap ton for him. Now for the editorial. This crime is rampant, intimidating, bamboozling, and ripping off the elderly. Most DAs won't touch it. If you even get a whiff that an elderly relative is being abused or ripped off, if it even crosses your mind, step in immediately. Kick butt and take names. You may be the only defense they have. But I'll tell you, it turned out to be one of the most interesting experiences of my life. My uncle got the last laugh. He outlived both of them and passed away peaceably at 100 years old, with me there with him. One of the last things he told me was that he had forgiven them for what they'd done. In conclusion, elderly uncle is nearly scammed out of $500,000 by a couple of Jezebels cruising the churches. PI steps in and saves the day. I learn a crap ton. We discovered that the driver who hit me not only went off the side of the road where I was, legally four-wheeling on a quad, she was talking on the cell phone, looking into the passenger seat, driving with no insurance and a revoked license because of previous convictions for causing accidents. After the truck, pushing my quad into a T-boned position, plowing up so much dirt in front of us that after 70 feet it finally came up to a halt. The investigator had evidence that she was driving 35 miles per hour in a 25 zone and she didn't brake after the impact. After the truck came to a stop, she jumped out and started running away, but witnesses caught her and held her there. My friend, who was sitting behind me, both of us 14, were carted off in ambulances and I never saw this woman's face. The trooper wrote the report that I, 14 years old, had taken an RV instead of an ATV and pulled out in front of the woman, though it was clear the accident happened off the roadway. The trooper interrogated me while I was lying on the ground waiting for ambulances before my parents even arrived. I was in shock while he rephrased the question, "Have you had any alcoholic or illegal substances today?" several times. My neighbors finally asked him to wait until my parents arrived. In the hospital room, he questioned me further while my parents were on their way. The nurse had to ask him to stop as my neck was being evaluated and I had not even had pain medication yet. The accident was deemed my fault, although there were 2 eyewitnesses who testified against the woman to the trooper, and later in court I was told by the DMV I would have to pay the woman's truck damages before I was allowed to get a driver's license, and I carried SR22 insurance for 5 years after I received it. The investigator uncovered proof that the trooper knew the woman who hit me and was possibly friends with her. For the months in between the accident and when the investigation was complete, I fought an awful amount of guilt, believing it was my fault and not having any memory of the accident. My friend's leg was badly injured and required extensive surgeries over the next 5 years, and she was visiting from Texas and had to be medevaced back there via helicopter, which left her family with a huge financial burden. During that time, I even considered taking my own life and took one attempt that thankfully failed. My parents took the case to the state Supreme Court over the course of the next 3 years, and when we finally came to trial, the judge said the only way the report could be cleared and the financial obligations relieved is if the state trooper took back his statement. When we began going that route, we were told the trooper had been dismissed from the force for wrongful behavior and his testimony was worth noting. That was an expensive lesson in corruption. The financial stress contributed greatly to my parents' divorce. However, if we hadn't hired the investigator, we may have went on thinking it was my fault. I'm very thankful to know that it truly wasn't. Teachers. What's something a student of yours has said that made you lose hope for them? Principal at an inner-city high school. I had to sit down with a student who had been caught plagiarizing for a second time. This time, from The Onion. I had a student use The Onion as a source. Specifically this one. Barry Bonds took performance-enhancing substances, reports everyone who has ever watched baseball. Hey now, the inability to tell satire from news is a really popular style of idiocy these days. There was this kid named Lawrence who was one of those typical wallflower Catholic kids I grew up with. His dad was in our scout troop as a leader and was really meticulous. Like everything had to be just so. In the late 70s, most of the troop leaders had a relaxed dress code, but Lawrence's dad dressed like a 1940s scouting manual model, complete with brown uniform and wide-brimmed hat. Everything was pleated and pressed. His dad drove an old MG Roadster that was constantly breaking down. They were upper class and his mum was not in the picture. But the way Lawrence's dad picked on him was brutal. Stand up straight, Lawrence. Chin up. Be a good lad. Chest out. Chin up. Lawrence, don't go over there. It's dirty over there. Lawrence, stand straight and tall when I address you. Don't be rude. Wait until I've started eating before you start. Lawrence, do I have to raise my voice, Lawrence? By high school, Lawrence just gave up. He wasn't perfect enough, so why bother? He stared into space, he attended school in person only, just a blank and hollow shell. His clothing didn't change, it only became dirtier. His hair got long, he lost weight, and his clothes just hung on him. I think the only way to deal with his dad's control issues was passive resistance. By his senior year in high school, he flunked out. Not sure what happened to him after that. High school teacher here. Dude, if you don't start coming to class and doing the work, you'll fail out of school. School's done nothing for me. I'm gonna rap to pay the bills, bro. Kid was an awful musician. Couldn't make a beat, couldn't write a rhyme to save his life. I've now had 3 successful rappers graduate from my class.
Years later, 2 of them have given up on the whole thing as more than a hobby, and one is still touring Europe. So when I have some kid rap terribly at me and say that's how he's going to make his money as an excuse for not doing anything in my class, I just laugh and then advise them to work on their flow. I work at an arts high school that attracts a lot of talented kids. You can still tell who's going to actually have a career in the arts because only a small number have the correct combination of dedication and talent, and an even smaller subset have humility and the ability to work with others. Yep, I have a friend I consistently second-guessed when he went on about the fact he was gonna make it one day. Didn't believe him, but he made it. Then again, he was always supremely talented, and I guess he finally figured out how to work hard in the end. Kid. Totally serious. I'm gonna drop out. I'll make money off YouTube. How many views are your videos getting? Kid. I have 4 subscribers, so I just need a few more. I had a student who has a severe mental disability, but was quite gifted in maths. But he's told myself, other adults in the room, the special education department head, and school psychologist he is going to drop out of high school to be a YouTuber. Mum and Dad are in serious denial of this fact, but he's dead set on it. You can see it in his eyes. In other news, it seems that the generation of students I have now want to be either YouTubers or professional video games players. I was born in the late 80s, and when I was their age, I remember having classmates being sternly told the actual statistics of them becoming professional athletes. I still have 2 to 3 classmates, graduated high school in 2007, that are dead set on making it into the NFL, but never played in high school or college. I feel this is the same with kids I'm seeing now. They don't truly understand the extremely low chance of them becoming pro in social media. Because they're growing up watching these people, of course they want to be like them. Just like the kids of our generation wanted to be movie stars or professional athletes. It's just that the world is moving into a digital age. Incident number 1. Can we just not learn this? It's hard. We should skip it. Incident number 2. I don't have to get good grades. My grandfather owns a house, and when he dies, my family is going to sell it for $1 million, so I won't ever have to get a job. I have a distant aunt like that. Screwed my mother and all her siblings and close family over, manipulating her father to change the will on his deathbed. She wanted all the money so she'd never have to work again. She spent it all inside 6 months and is now completely broke. She destroyed any shred of love any of my family had for her. Really, truly a horrible person. My wife told me this story about the time she was lecturing a kid on why he should try to do well in school. She asked him what he wanted to be when he grows up. His response, I want to be in jail. That's where my dad and uncle is. She had no response, probably the only time in her career that she was left speechless by a student. Frick, that's actually really sad. How about, if you study you could get a job as a guard in their jail and make life nice for your dad and uncle as well as seeing them every day. I had a student who was always acting up. I constantly tried talking to him about his behavior, and I wrote plenty of referrals. Throughout all of this, I would email and call his mother, but never got a response. One day, he was pacing around and texting someone. I told him to put his phone away, and he said, I can't, I'm not too happy right now. So I said, will you take it out into the hall and I'll give you 1 minute? His response really shook me. He said, no, I'll sit down. I just want my mom to turn the water back on. When all you know about a student is what you see in the classroom, it's easy to forget that they may not have a great home life. So I did wonder, is there any hope for him? But it also wasn't truly any fault of his own. He just had a crap home life where he was stricken by poverty. This is how my niece is. It's terrible. She's 15 and should be worrying about school and college. Instead, she worries about getting the younger kids up, getting them dressed and fed. On Monday, she kept asking me if I could drop off some bread and milk and cereal. It's just so frustrating because there are 3 adults in that house and none of them work. They're just junkies. We have called Child Protection Services more times than we can count. Her mother had her at 15 and then just kept having kids. My sister-in-law also grew up in a similar home to the one she's providing now. I really just think it's one of those cycles that she just can't break. Her thought process is, I grew up like this, so why make it any different from my kids? All 4 of them have different dads and only one of them has a dad that's involved. I want to be a substance dealer, but the cool kind. You know, the ones that wear a suit and carry a briefcase. He was 17 at the time and completely serious. He was expelled a month later for jumping another student. When is the teacher coming? This wasn't the first lesson I had with this child. I teach computer science in university. I get a lot of freshmen that picked the major because they heard it was a high-paying major, but don't actually like the subject they're in. The worst was a recent student that asked if they could just do the assignments by hand. They don't want to use a computer, they didn't really like using them. People use computers too much. I don't start doing that.
Also thought computers could do too much and wanted people to stop using them. Bruh, this is a programming course for computers in a major about making computers do things. You're going to need to use a computer. Needless to say, I told them this probably wasn't the major for them. Is it just me, or does it sound like everyone's elderly parents complaining at the pace the world is moving in? A true old soul already, and this comment was from 2016, when we'd all been solidly using laptops at uni for a decade. I used to teach science in public high school, had to convince a sophomore that trees came from seeds, and I blew his mind. I had one 4-year-old who couldn't hold a pencil. He couldn't remember how to pick it up and didn't have the strength to push it down hard enough on the paper to get any leverage. He couldn't color, had no motor skills whatsoever. He didn't have a dominant hand. His parents liked to leave him at my learning center for an hour, even though he couldn't use the bathroom on his own. He was 4 years old and didn't have the slightest grasp of the alphabet and couldn't retain anything we taught him. It took a month to get him to count to 10. My theory on all of this is that on top of a learning disability or developmental delay, his mum was in denial, and of course he was a natural lefty, who was forced to use his right hand, but because of his disability, he couldn't, and ended up not developing any motor skills in either hand. Poor kid. Had a 4th grader say he didn't need school because he was going to have a wife and she would do everything. Same student, while disrupting the entire class, also said, "What are you gonna do? I know you can't hit me." At the time, the kid was visiting the school social worker multiple times a week. Dad wouldn't hold a job while mum did everything and learned from dad to disrespect rules and that getting into trouble meant nothing. Kid was expelled shortly after that for beating and holding another student against the wall and threatening to kill him. We wish we could have done something for the kid, but it was a small private school with limited resources and the parents didn't help with reinforcement. We were happy when the parents pulled the 2 older kids out as well, since they were starting to cause a lot of problems as well. I taught lower elementary. Most teachers will get frustrated at some point by how hard it can be to get a child who may be lacking upstairs some extra help. This was the case with one of my favorite students. It didn't matter that he couldn't do any of the work that his peers were doing due to his incredibly low IQ. He was performing at his ability level, but he was just so nice to everyone. I had set time aside every day to help him with his reading. We were using the short story of The Ugly Duckling. It had one short sentence on each page, and after 2 weeks, he could get through it with minimal help. However, reading the words isn't all there is to reading. I had asked him if he could tell me what the story was about, since we had spent time on it every day for the last 2 weeks. He started his oral retelling off great, and I'm super excited. This is a huge deal for my man because up until this point, I couldn't get any retell or comprehension out of him. I'm super pumped and he is feeding off my energy, and he's so proud of himself. This kid is glowing. We're only 3/4 of the way through the story though, and we come up to the end of The Ugly Duckling, and he's telling me that the duckling changes. This word took us forever to say, much less read, but then he stops and goes into his deep thinking stage. I prod him a little bit. He changes? What does he change into there, buddy? He brings his eyes back from the ceiling, and then with the biggest smile, he shouts out, "A butterfly!" A girl, 8th grade, told me she wanted to have kids, 2 to 3, by the time she was 18, so she could have the energy to keep up with them and then work the pole to support them. My wife had a student in 3rd grade who refused to do any writing assignments. My wife told him that she was going to call his parents to explain what was going on if he didn't start doing his work. He said, "I don't care. My mom said I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. Rules don't apply to me." My wife called his mum, and his mum told my wife that she, meaning my wife, just has to understand how her son is, and if he doesn't want to do the work, then he doesn't have to. His behaviors all made sense after that, and it was a very tough year. He stopped doing all work and started harassing other kids, probably partially due to boredom, since he was doing nothing else by the end of the year. As long as he was happy, my wife couldn't get the mum on board. "I ain't doing any of that crap. My mum already said she's signing the papers, to drop out, as soon as I turn 16. Look, I know that many people often drop out and end up going back to get a GED. I sincerely hope this young man turns his life around. He'd had an incredibly tough upbringing, and along with that, a history of violent conduct in and out of school. I tried my best to remain patient with him in my room and to motivate him any way I could. At the point he said those words, I just don't think there was anything more I could do. That was last year, and he hasn't been back to school this year. I really hope that at some point he figures things out and gets his life going in a positive direction, whatever that might be. University professor here. A student last term never purchased the textbook and thus never did his homework. He sat in the back and spaced out all class, failed one exam, and barely passed the other. He came to me during the final week of class to ask me if he could do all of his missed assignments and then ask why I didn't remind him to do them. Bro, this is university. I am not chasing after you. I had one who stopped coming to class for the last 6 weeks of the semester, and instead of writing the essay on the exam, wrote a 2-page rant about how unfair it was of me to base the exam on stuff that happened in class. Also in the rant, complains about how I had not called her to remind her to do assignments, come to class, or find out what was on the exam. A good reminder that many students aren't too far removed from school kids. No judgment, I was a moron in my first year of uni. Also, these two both seem in the making to become prime Karens. I work at an alternative school for kids kicked out of public school for severe emotional and behavioral issues. A lot of them are going to require government services for the rest of their lives. There's usually not just one thing they say, but we know that they will never have normal lives. It's a little disheartening to hear a 6-year-old scream that he's going to fricking kill you, especially when you were playing tag not 5 minutes before. There's a young boy who can be very sweet and is an adorable blonde butterball. However, he has pretty severe behavioral problems and gets restrained at some point on a daily basis. I saw his parents one day because they live in government-subsidized housing close by and walk him to school. It was 50 degrees out and the little boy was in a basketball jersey and shorts. His parents looked exactly how I expected them to look and were rude to all the staff they interacted with. It showed me that no matter how much we do, he spends most of his life with his crappy parents. Having a child with behaviors doesn't inherently make someone a bad parent, but in our program specifically, most of the students come from harsh backgrounds which either causes or exacerbates their behavior. I had a student say, "I don't need to learn any of this. I won't use it in real life." When I tried to explain why math was going to be useful, he responded, "You're a dumb idiot. Watch me get rich without even going to school." I mean, it's been done, but probably not the best idea. Paraphrased, are we ever going to use this as an adult? I mean, you won't, but some of the smart kids will. I worked in vet clinics for 15 years. Here's an example of something I heard every day. Me. "Okay, go ahead and set the carrier on the scale." Owner. "Do you want me to take the cat out?" No, we don't want the cat loose in the clinic. Just go ahead and put the carrier with the cat on the scale. Owner puts the cat carrier on the scale. I write down the weight. "Okay, let's head into the exam room." "But how much does the cat weigh?" "When we get you into a secured room, we'll get the cat out and weigh the carrier." "But how will you know how much the cat weighs?" Algebra. This happens every day. I had one student at a bilingual school in Mexico, who after being at the school and supposedly learning English for 5+ years, still couldn't speak it and barely tried to make any effort to learn anything, didn't do assignments and failed almost every test. When we mentioned it to her parents, their attitude was that she doesn't really need it because she'll just marry someone who'll take care of everything for her. My thought was, who would want to marry someone who doesn't know anything and makes no effort? Just this week, I have a student in grade 5 that's pretty oppositional, has a tough home life, etc. He doesn't always try very hard, but sometimes I can see he's trying to put in some effort. We were talking about how I grade them and he interrupts the conversation with, "I don't care at all about my grades." And I thought, here we go, another rant about how unfair school is. I just want to know that I can keep getting better. Perfect. I got chills. Thank goodness. Excuse me for diverting from the subject momentarily. Sometimes I just need a more uplifting story in the middle of all this gloom. This is probably going to be buried, but I like to reference this one from time to time. I had a student who was a hoarder. He was one of those kids that we all remember who had the backpack that was filled with everything for every class. It looked like this kid carried around a small grocery cart on his back. One day I'm walking him to his locker to look for an assignment that I knew I'd given him before, and I smelled this nasty smell. Big surprise, it's his locker. Open it to find 89 cartons of chocolate milk stacked inside. That's not all. On the floor he had a pretty large mason jar filled with what looked like dead bugs. I asked him why he had so much milk in his locker, and he said, stone-faced, "To dip the bugs in." Never sure what happened to this kid when he left, but that was the most disturbing for me. I'm a second-grade teacher, and I have a boy who lies constantly, about anything. He was on camera watching the footage of himself punching a student in the face, and he crossed his arms and said, "If I didn't do it, then I didn't do it." The worst part is his mum believes every word he says and attacks the school for making him accountable for his actions. He's going to do something as an adult and go to jail. When they pull him away, I know he's going to be yelling, "If I didn't do it, I didn't do it!" 7th grade in the US. On the first day of class, the students each said what they did over the summer. One kid said he went to Germany. The kid sitting next to him audibly asked where that was, and if it was further away than Chicago. I thought he must have misunderstood what the first guy said, so I intervened. Chicago is about 100 miles away.
Germany is in Europe. That's another continent entirely. The kid looked blankly at me and asked me what that was. The word continent. I was dumbfounded and gestured at the map of the world on the wall and pointed at the continents, thinking he must have learned to pronounce them differently or something. But nope, he literally didn't know what they were and never realized that the picture on the wall of the geography room was actually a map of the world? He was in 7th grade and he didn't know what a continent was, or have even a toddler's level of understanding of what a map was. I once had a student who didn't know what the answer to 5 times 5 was. This was in the preparatory year of a private medical university. Fear for the patients if she ever graduates. My mum is a nursing instructor and she has horror stories of people who have become nurses. The bad students are rude and entitled, and they either skip work, lie on it, or expect my mum to do every assignment with them, step by step after class. When the student starts to fail because they're not meeting the standards, the people above my mum will give them the alternative, easy busy work assignments, so they can pass the program and the school will start to have good statistics. So if you get a nurse someday who's a butthole or seems like an idiot, then they probably are.
Me. What country did the United States gain independence from?
Student. Hispanic.
Tynesha, that's an ethnicity.
Nuh-uh, it's a country in Africa.
Me, internally. Tynesha, you're freaking 13, what the hell? And then externally. Okay, can someone help Tynesha answer the question? Another student.
France.
I teach English in Japan and sometimes hear, I don't understand this because I'm Japanese.
What a well-constructed sentence for a Japanese person.
Well, they say it in Japanese. I had a senior say he didn't think it was fair. I've grown to hate that word, by the way. He didn't think it was fair that my exams used short answer questions instead of multiple choice. She said,
some of us just aren't good writers.
I responded that if you're a senior in college and can't string a few sentences together, something has gone wrong. She stormed out of class. My college juniors and seniors, yes plural, who tried to justify the Holocaust because there were a lot of Jewish people in Europe at the time. To make it worse, almost half of my family died in the Holocaust. They don't know this, not that it matters. Had my Year 2 private student try to turn over his study table on me. It didn't work, I slammed it down, and then screamed at me to write out his homework because that's what his mum pays me for. There's still hope, but it made me so sad and angry as he assumed I was of a lesser position than him just because I was being paid. Like, yeah, nah, bye. Minimum wage workers. What customer rules aren't you paid enough to actually enforce?
I worked graveyard at a Jack in the Box near a community college. The line would get so long, I decided to give out a mystery treat to every passenger in the car. From free orange juice to Jumbo Jacks, everyone was a winner.
Reminds me of the time I went to Taco Bell late one night and ordered a single taco, and when I came to grab my order from the drive-thru, I got a huge sack of like 20 tacos. I hit the mega jackpot. People sleeping in their cars overnight. I consistently work night shifts and see it all the time. We're meant to tap the windows and ask them to leave, but really, if someone has to sleep in their car and we have a huge empty car park, why kick someone while they're down? My favorite old folks aren't usually charged as much as they should be. I'm not about to tack on an extra 50 cents for extra peanut butter. If someone was awful to me, you bet your butt they would be paying the full price. I'd also give away muffins that wouldn't be sold the next morning. Super against the rules according to the boss because it encourages vagrants. But I also told my manager it was a dumb rule and I was doing it anyway, but wouldn't say where they were from. He didn't mind and didn't let the boss know. It didn't increase vagrants coming in, no harm, no foul. Sometimes those muffins were my meal of the day too. At Christmas, I forgot to charge someone for the box of groceries they were getting as a special treat for their kids. She was someone that always came in just for a coffee and for a treat on Fridays, and was the nicest lady living on a small pension. She'd always rather spend money on someone else, so she deserved it. Yup, giving away muffins is a love language to your favorite customers in hospitality. I remember that feeling of giving the nice ones something for being decent folks. Made for great regular customers who would brighten your day next time they came in. I worked at an airline. The minimum change fee was $75. At the time, that amount of money would take me about 10 hours to earn. Let me tell you how many ways I found to waive that fee. Oh, what a great conversation about weather. Let me waive that fee for you. Oh, and your child is crying in the background. Let me waive that fee for you. I found any reason to waive that. In Disney World, I worked at Cirque du Soleil. They would throw away all the food at the end of the night, but nothing got me more upset than the cotton candy. It cost them like 15 cents a bag to make, but sold it for $5.50 and then they would throw it away. I used to grab bags and give them to the guests for free. Also gave away popcorn and hot dogs and stuff. No use letting it go to waste. The Cirque team was extremely small, maybe 14 employees on payroll, with about 8 on shift at a given time. Yet we serviced over 6,400 people in 2 shows each day. A typical shift went like this. Go in at 4 p.m. and prepare for 6. Management will give you how many hot dogs, cotton candy, pretzels, and popcorn to make. When 5:30 rolled around, we opened the doors and sold. Then, after the show finishes at 7:30, live show, so it varied, we would restock depending on how good we did during the first show, and the number we're expecting for the second. We make adjustments and prepare for the next show. Around 8:30, we open the doors, sell. Once the show is on, there will rarely be someone buying stuff. They spent $80 a ticket to watch an 85-minute show. I'd be darned if they were going to miss a second of it. After the show, 3,200 people are rushing out, so when the theatre was about 80% empty, if I knew we were going to have an abundance of stuff left over, I was doing it long enough to accurately gauge, I'd just give it away. No harm done. I worked at the Costco hot dog stand. One of my coworkers volunteer tested at an animal shelter. She would take the extra hot dogs at the end of the night and bring them to the shelter to feed the dogs. Management found out and fired him over it. It teed me off because he stole nothing but garbage. People paying with expired coupons for anything that wasn't medicine. I worked in retail pharmacy and we had to let customers make their front store purchases at the pharmacy if they wanted to. I just scanned all the expired coupons anyway because it wasn't worth the trouble of having an argument with the customer and increasing the amount of time that they were on the line. Obviously, with those RX coupons, it was another story, as overriding that could be considered insurance fraud. At minimum wage, the only things I would care about are the things that would get me arrested or would keep me up at night. Not a worker, but I was being assisted by a minimum wage worker at a chain arcade. Me and my friend were figuring out what we could afford to get from the little rewards area, and we started to sit down and begin counting. He saw us and said, "Nah, don't worry, they don't pay me enough to care." We still felt bad, so we put some of the candy we got back. He started scanning our point cards and the rewards. We had an extra 5 to 10 pieces of candy, and he was like, "Oh, looks like you can't afford it." Then he slid all of the candy into the bag and handed it to us. 10 out of 10 employee. I hope he's doing well. I work at a pizza joint that has a redemption center, kinda like Chuck E. Cheese. I do this all the time, especially for birthday kids. If it's their birthday and they want something, I just ask them, "Well, it's your birthday? What do you want? Pick anything you like." They want the thing that has 1,000 tickets? Fine. It costed us $5, and your parents probably gave you $10 anyway. It's your birthday. You just go be a prince or princess. A couple of years ago, I worked at a deli inside of a Walmart neighborhood market, aka just groceries. Every 3 hours, we had to mark rotisserie chickens and other foods on the hot plates down 50%. If people were kind or looked like they could use some help, I would mark them down almost any time. I couldn't tell you how many folks came in who I would just give a few extra slices of cheese or ham to for free, and just how their faces lit up. They definitely needed it more than Walmart. Having worked in multiple movie theaters, I can tell you that the ushers absolutely give 0 Fs about you trying to sneak food in from the outside. It's a minimum wage job, they have no interest in hassling people or getting into a confrontation over the bag of peanut M&Ms in your purse. It's a million times easier to just turn a blind eye. There was one family that used to come to the movies almost every week. They would always bring their grandma, who was in a wheelchair, and she always had a box of pizza on her lap covered by a shawl, and this was obvious to everyone. It's a fresh, hot pizza, for frick's sake. You can smell it from 30 feet away. I honestly just thought about telling them that I didn't care if they were bringing in food, but then I thought that maybe that's the only reason they brought grandma, and I didn't want to take that away from her. I love the extra little considerate touch of holding your tongue to specifically make sure that the grandma is continued to be included in family movie night. Although it would be pretty callous of the family to just cut her out once they knew they could bring pizza themselves. I used to work in town at an auto parts store with a lot of gang activity. Every now and then, some monstrously muscular dude covered in tats would walk in and grab 2 batteries off the rack. We assumed for the hydraulics most were using, and walk out. We would just wave and say, "Have a nice day," rather than get the crap beat out of us. We'd just write it off as a store loss. Using the bathroom if you aren't actually a customer. We're the only place open at 3 in the morning. I'm not going to tell people to go find somewhere else. I had this backfire a number of times on me, actually. After relenting on the not a public restroom rule, people just messed the entire bathroom up to say thank you. Years back, I worked at a local chain restaurant that had a drive-thru. One of the owners would occasionally come through and reiterate that we were only to give one ketchup packet per order of fries at the drive-thru. Our fry orders were huge and one packet was nowhere near enough, so as soon as he was gone, we'd go back to throwing handfuls of ketchup packets into the bags. Long time ago, I ordered a bunch of Taco Bell for myself and 4 friends. It was about 2 a.m. and we were surf fishing in a small SoCal town. Anyway, after the highly stoned worker handed me my huge bag of fries, he asked me what kind and how much sauce I wanted. I replied, "A frick ton of mild, please," and he proceeded to hand me an entire box of it. I work as a lifeguard at a theme park, first job, and one thing some customers do is pretend they're going to faint or they're having heat-related problems, so they can get us to call into base and get them free food or drinks. Sometimes I really wish I was a bad person. They really do know how to game the system. Not me, but my boyfriend worked a store in a large mall. The store refuses to put security sensors in because it ruins the laid-back vibe of the store. They wanted you to chase shoplifters. One girl working there almost got maced. A male coworker was threatened to be stabbed. He just didn't care and wouldn't chase. He would just tell the manager on duty what happened. Some of the managers never listened. The security in the mall is awful. So bad that a different store a friend was working at, where their employees actually got attacked for trying to stop a shoplifter, that store hired their own private security to protect their employees. Nobody working minimum wage should get threatened to be fired for not chasing shoplifters, who are threatening them bodily harm. I've worked a ton of retail jobs. When they do training about shoplifting, the first thing every single one said was never ever chase a shoplifter. Get a good look at them and call the cops, but it's not your job to catch criminals, and it's illegal to detain people. All you can do is call the cops. If the item doesn't have a price, I usually just let the customer name it if they're nice. We're supposed to have someone check the price, but that usually takes an incredibly long time, and as everyone's busy, I save that for the buttholes. I worked at a deli and I had the power to override the price per pound anytime I felt like it. So if a customer was upset, I'd give them half off. Or if they had a cool shirt, I didn't really care. This reminds me of when I worked in a supermarket and got minimum wage. They would sometimes ask me to work the bakery. I'd give the kids free cookies and then offer one to the parent. I read here that Dairy Queen requires you to charge for anything extra when ringing someone up. But after you purchase it, if you ask the person making it for extra whatever, they throw it in for free. Soda in a water cup. My local McDonald's has a rule where you have to pay $1 for a water cup, so I took a ketchup holder and filled it up. Aren't those really tiny? Yeah, the struggle is real. Shots, 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 shots! I work at an online diaper bag company, and if a bag was returned, I was supposed to find out if it was a defect or the customer's fault to decide how to issue a replacement. When a frantic, hormonal new mom would call me, getting ready to rant and put her foot down, I would always interrupt their story and just ask for their address and what type of bag they wanted and ship it for free. No way am I being paid enough to get in that argument. I don't care if they're carrying large bricks in the bag. Take a new one. To be clear, this was the same response whether people called in upset or not. All I wanted was to get off the phone call and finish work. If you cared enough to call, then you convinced me. I was not interested in arguing with any moms, regardless of the initial demeanor. Yeah, I have complete sympathy with people taking customer complaints, and to be honest, I'm never turned away by these people, so I'd say most of them have the same policy as you. This kind of service can actually pay off significantly in customer loyalty. Last winter, I ordered a few bottles of flavored coffee syrup from a large online retailer. I didn't think the bottles might be glass, and nobody on their end considered that shipping glass bottles of syrup in -20-degree weather may not work out well. Suffice it to say that what arrived in the box was more bulk snow cones with glass chips than bottles of syrup, which also ruined a couple of other items packaged in there. I got in touch with them, armed with pictures, and expected to have to show them the damage. Instead, within a couple of minutes, I effortlessly had an account credit applied. They offered to ship replacements, but I declined since they would have had the same fate. The result was that not only did I not hesitate to buy more coffee syrup from them, in appropriate weather, but it boosted my confidence in buying any product from them. And I buy a lot of stuff online nowadays. I worked at a hardware store in a garden center making close to minimum wage. We often loaded heavy bags of mulch and dirt for customers in their truck beds and whatnot. We were told that we were not allowed to take tips from customers. So being the good boy that I was, I turned down a couple of tips until one day I loaded up a full customer pickup bed and he handed me $20. I told him I can't take that and he looked me dead in the eye and said, "Do they really pay you so much that you don't need it?" I stopped being an idiot that day. Why the frick I let someone pay me so little and tell me I'm not allowed to make more, and how I listened to that is just embarrassing now.
Worked at Target. They had the same store policy. But my manager also said just take it anyway because they had someone complain about someone refusing to take a tip as being rude a week or two prior. Sometimes I'd just buy a box or two of fruit snacks for everyone and toss them in the break room with it. I used to be a cashier at Walmart. No crap, I had someone try to give me a $50 tip for knowing how to do my job properly. I desperately needed it, but I couldn't take it as there are cameras and I was scared crapless that I was going to get fired. He insisted, so I put it in the donation jar. That's so terrible at a low-wage job in which generally customer service can't get paid enough, they can't accept a tip from a customer for providing quality service. I work in retail and part of my job is helping customers load furniture purchases into their car. Unfortunately, most of our customers never really expected to be buying furniture when they came in, just by the nature of where I work, so they oftentimes come in vehicles that are grossly unfit for the job. I've had to help customers try to lift love seats and sofas into the back of their sedans, for example. Well, one day after I'd been there a few weeks, I got called into the furniture department for customer assistance. So I go out there with a flatbed cart and meet the lady who bought a large chest. We get it on the cart and I push it out into the parking lot. Then she points me to her tiny little car. I can immediately tell there's no way in heck it's going to fit, but she's convinced we can make it work. About 20 minutes later, she actually proves me wrong. As we're saying our goodbyes, she pulls a $5 bill out of her wallet and offers it to me. I tell her that I just started there recently, and so I actually wasn't sure if I'm allowed to accept tips. She said something along the lines of, "It'll just be our little secret." And after thinking for a moment, I said, frick it, helping her was way more trouble than the $3 I was paid in those 20 minutes. So I took her money, went back inside and casually asked my boss if I was allowed to accept tips. "No," he said. "Don't get yourself fired over an extra $1 or $2. I briefly considered handing him the money and apologizing for accepting it, despite not being sure I was allowed to. Instead, I told him, "Okay, I only ask because that furniture call I just helped with was going to offer me a tip before she realized she didn't have any cash on her. Made me realize I didn't actually know, so I'm just asking for future reference." Oh no, wouldn't want to lose this minimum wage job taking money offered by thankful customers that in no way costs the business anything. Massive retail corporations really just are the worst, aren't they? Work your minimum wage employees to the bone and flat out block them from taking gifts from grateful customers. No way that I wouldn't take that money. I work at Target and we aren't allowed to do anything to physically stop people from stealing. If someone's trying to be sneaky, we're supposed to say, "I think you forgot that in your cart." But if you wanted to grab something and just walk away with it, only thing we can do is tell asset protection. Back when I worked for Home Depot, one of the guys in hardware watched someone stuff screws and nails and other small items into their pockets. My coworker walked up behind him and scared the frickin' crap out of him by yelling, "So, are you going to pay for those or what?" He got in huge trouble but wasn't fired, and it was funny as frick watching someone flail about with nails flying out of their pants. Whenever I shop at a department store, I always try to find the most disgruntled-looking cashier. I've had cashier bags that weren't scanned. They didn't care, and I don't say anything. That happened to me at Michael's, a crafts store, a few days before Christmas. The store is absolute hell on earth, and my cashier was a weary, 16-ish-year-old guy who was just done. He had the 1,000-yard stare, poor kid. He was mumbling on about how his girlfriend is mad at him because something about her birthday and how all the customers are just so mean and scary. I don't think he was even talking to me. I think he was just having a stream of consciousness. Anyway, I notice he's just shoving things into a plastic bag, so I say, "I think you forgot to ring some of those things up." He looks at me in a daze and says, "You look like a nice lady and I just can't do this anymore, so here you go." Wow. Thanks, fam. Hope you had a happy holiday. Used to work at a movie theater. No one cares if you bring your own snacks, although it's super aggravating if you just leave your snack garbage at the theater instead of taking it out with you. We usually have an hour window where all the theaters are getting out. We tend to have about 10 minutes per theater to clean on a busy day. Leaving your garbage in your seats makes everything slower. It's not hard to carry it down to the can. I work in an electronics retail store. We have a standard price match guarantee, 14 days with a receipt. I had a woman come in and give me a huge attitude and explain that she brought this TV 2 days ago and paid $3,199 for it, and that one of our competitors had it for $2,999 and she demanded her money back, plus the 10% difference. I made her wait and pretended to check with the manager. Well, when I looked it up, we were currently selling it for $2,500. So I went over with a huge smile and told the mean woman who was giving me dirty looks the whole time, "Sure, Mom, we can match the $2,999 for you and the 10% of their $200 difference." So she walked out thinking she won the battle, paying $2,979 for her TV.
when, if she was nice, I would have given it to her for our sale price of $2,499. Being a B-word cost her $480. As a valet, we would reuse tickets and just pocket the cash to park as our tip on slow days. The manager never counted how many cars we parked or how many tickets we used. I was taught this by my co-workers on my first day. It was the only way to make money. Also, I never asked for ID when selling M-rated games to people who looked under 17 at a major retailer. It's not a law, and my supervisor didn't care, as he wanted as many sales as he could get. Used to wait tables. People couldn't bring their own drinks, booze, or just water. I honestly didn't care if I saw them bring their own, as ours was way overpriced. One day, this obviously broke couple came in to celebrate something, and they asked for tacos and a big bottle of beer, but were discouraged by the price of the bottle. So I told them they could buy a bottle from the store on the other side of the street. It was half the price, and if it was warm, I could exchange it for one of our cold ones. I think I was too nice to people, though. I've never encountered another waitress or waiter who would be as nice as I was. But meh, it felt good, and the bosses could never tell. A coffee shop I worked at was so poorly managed that I practically gave free drinks to the 5 to 7 customers that we actually had on a regular basis. The manager and owner were always in China, and the few customers were usually our friends. I even took on double shifts so I'd get paid more. We let the customers do whatever the heck they wanted, and it even got to a point where they played Smash Brothers in the back. They even hung out in the kitchen to cook food. As employees, we probably broke every universal employment law possible. It was the chillest minimum wage job I had, but unfortunately it came to an end when the entire staff except myself decided to go to EDC, and my manager happened to show up that one day. About 22 years ago, I worked in a Kmart that had a diner, and I was the dishwasher. One day, a waitress came up to me and asked me to clean a mess in the ladies' room. In my ignorance, I'd just assumed someone had spilled the trash or something that innocuous. I opened the door and everything looked fine. I opened the first 2 stalls and everything still looked fine. Then I opened the 3rd stall. Some lady had projectile crapped all over the back wall of the stall. It was a tremendous amount of liquefied crap. So, after dry heaving a number of times, I leave the ladies' room. I informed the head waitress that there was no way in heck I was going to touch that mess. She whined and moaned about it, but I wouldn't budge. She called the store manager down to the restaurant and he started yelling at me to clean up the mess in front of everyone else. I flat out refused and told him to go take a look for himself. I grabbed a dish bucket from the opposite end of the restaurant, and on my way back I saw him come out of the restroom. On his way out, he stopped by the hostess and told her to put up an out-of-order sign. They ended up hiring a professional cleaning service to take care of it. Apparently, he didn't get paid enough to deal with that crap either. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.